Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are doing all right. I hope you guys can hear me okay. No issues, no anomalies, no sound defects. I'm going to check before I start the show to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. Let's see. Good morning. I see Mama Thomas is here. Can you hear me all right? I can hear you. Are there any anomalies, any echo, anything like that? Anything weird? Sound is good. Again, just make clear, no echo. Good morning. How you guys doing this morning? It is early. I'm hoping that my guest comes on. He's supposed to come on at 7:15. We will see. I haven't had the opportunity to hit him up this morning. I was hitting him in the midtime. But I hope you guys can hear me. Look, the Democrats are in full-blown panic. They are losing their minds. They're freaking out. And you can tell they're freaking out because they're getting far more shrill in the things that they're coming out with. You have situations like this one with Joe Biden screaming that Donald Trump should be put in jail. Bringing.
It's not a joke. This is a guy who also wants to replace every civil servant, every single one. Thinks he has a right under the Supreme Court ruling on immunity to be able, if need be, if it was the case, to actually physically eliminate, shoot, kill someone who he believes to be a threat to him. I mean, so I know this sounds bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We gotta lock him up. Political guy.
Now, just to be clear, he pointed out that Donald Trump wants to, A, be able to replace every single servant, every postman, every school teacher, every state dog catcher. Replace those people and put them in, I would imagine, with the Trump loyalists. Okay. But also, he goes further and said that Donald Trump wants to be able to just kill people, to just shoot people. Okay. And he said the response is to lock him up. And then he says, politically. Okay, well, I don't know what politically locking somebody up means. I know what it means in earnest. Oh, excellent. Excellent. I guess we'll join me after all. I don't know what that means. Does he mean... Well, clearly we know what it means. It means lock him up. I mean, the Justice Department has been going after Donald Trump for the last 2 years, or the last year, per se, especially when the election came around. Lock him up means lock him up. The wild part about it is when Donald Trump was running around saying that they needed to lock Hillary Clinton up, there was outrage. Democrats were losing their mind. Oh my God! He said we need to lock up his political opponent. While in earnest and in fact, it is what they are literally trying to do with Trump and what they've been trying to do for the last year. If you remember, Joe Biden was the one that came out and said Mitt Romney wanted to put people in chains. That is the same guy. So there's that. Then you have Hillary Clinton, who recently came out. I know how much you guys love Hillary Clinton. And effectively is doubling down on the John Kelly thing. So John Kelly came out and said, Donald Trump is praising Hitler. He said that Hitler had good ideas and he had great generals. Okay. Now, we have heard Hitler complain about his generals over and over again, but put that to the side for the moment. A, I don't even know if this took place. And B, I don't think anybody cares. Democrats care. I don't know if anybody else cares. But of course, again, this is the stuff that you say when you are desperate. This gets amplified by Kamala Harris, who comes out and says something similar and doubles down.
It's not a joke.
On the John Kelly comments. If I can find it. 1 second. Right here.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who is loyal to him personally.
Donald Trump wants generals like Adolf Hitler, and he wants generals that are loyal to him specifically. So they're amplifying it. They're going with it. All right, she's falling behind in the polls. It's getting tighter. What are we going to do? And their thing is Hitler. What we're going to do is Trump loves Hitler. This gets amplified further by Hillary Clinton, who just came out and said, Donald Trump wants to have a Hitler rally. And people who are going to that rally are effectively Nazis. Yes, Hillary Clinton is just saying it out loud.
Actually pledge their support. Kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. And, you know, one other thing that you'll see next week, Caitlin, is Trump actually reenacting the Madison Square Garden rally in 1939. I write about this in my book. President Franklin Roosevelt was appalled that neo-Nazis, fascists in America were lining up to essentially pledge their support for the kind of government that they were seeing in Germany. So I don't think we can ignore it. And, you know, one other thing that
This is astonishing. And it's astonishing due to the shrill level that they're getting. If you're wondering why all of these people are coming out doing this, that are Democrats, by the way, you only need to go so far as the real clear politics. Right here. So if you look at the numbers, look at the average. Trump 48.5, Harris 48.8. But what that average is not showing you is over the last few polls. Wall Street Journal poll, Trump 49, Harris 46. Forbes poll, Trump 51, Harris 49. I don't know what the TIPP is, but that one gives Harris 3. The next one, Trump 49, 47. 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 out of 5 of the last polls is showing Trump up. Better look at it is this, Trump versus Harris. Look at this. Trump gets all the way down to 46, Harris 48. And then you get this. This is why they're freaking out. This precipitous drop all the way down at 29th in August, and then a climb, and a climb, and a climb. And the climb hasn't stopped with, what, 2 weeks into the election. So as the election gets closer and closer and closer, Donald Trump's average gets higher and higher and higher. You can look at it, you can see it, and you can not just see it, you can on some level feel it. And it's that feeling it that they are dealing with. In fact, keep in mind, I would imagine that all of these people have access to internal polling. All of these people have probably an access to the Kamala Harris campaign. All of these people are aware of what is taking place on the ground. They can see it, they can feel it, it is palpable. Hence, the freak out. The, oh my God, she looks like she's going to lose. You even have the thing about the black vote, which, again, if you get a situation where Donald Trump gets 15% of the black vote, Kamala Harris is going to lose this race. Right here. This is black voters. In 2016, Democrats had 92%. 2020, Democrats had 90%. 2024, that drops to 78%. 78%. And what makes this worse, by the way, meaning what makes this more, let's say, palpable, is when you get people saying it aloud. Meaning it's one thing if somebody in his home, in his basement, is going to agree to vote for Donald Trump that is black. Okay, there's that. There's one thing if you have people who are in disparate parts of the country who have ideas, but don't say those ideas. Okay, those people are going to the polls individually and they're going to make their vote. It's another thing when you put a camera on a black person or group of black people, and it was like, I'm not voting for her. I don't like her. I'm voting for Trump. What it does is it allows other people who are part of that particular disposition to go in and do the exact same thing because they were given permission. And for the most part, the level of peer pressure erodes when you get more people coming out saying, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. I'll tell you, I put my vote in. My vote was for Jill Stein. And I'm not advocating people vote for anybody. I am advocating that if a party is supporting genocide, that party should not get a vote of support for backing that genocide. You shouldn't reward a group who has power to use it and don't. With power comes great responsibility. Thank you, Spider-Man or Uncle Ben. But Uncle Ben is right. If you see people getting killed in mass, buildings being blown up, apartment buildings being leveled in the light of day, tents being bombs dropped on tents where people are literally being burned alive, where you can see those people being burned alive. Those bombs are from the United States. Those bombs are given by Joe Biden and the Kamala Harris administration. Those bombs and that political support is given by the Biden-Harris administration. So to turn around and say, well, we have nothing to do with this. We have no power in this process, despite the fact that we're giving them money, bombs, bullets, intelligence, and political diplomatic support. But otherwise, other than all of those things, we have nothing to do with it. I'm sorry. That argument is found lacking. And because that argument is found lacking, you should get punished for it. Israel cannot go out and do this stuff if it wasn't
So yesterday we learned that
for us.
Former Chief of Staff John Kelly, a retired.
For example,
You can tell a lot about a person.
This is a building in the middle of Beirut being blown to smithereens. I can show you images of kids being slaughtered. I can show you images of kids being rounded up, moms and kids, and then gunfire off in order to push those people out of the north. I can show you documents and interviews that they had where Netanyahu openly told Blinken, look, I'm not going to go out and tell people that we're not going to starve the Palestinians. No, the reality of it is that they're going to occupy and take the north. They're going to occupy or try to occupy southern Lebanon. They're going to take parts of Syria. This is their greater Israel. Now, this is clear as day. I've been saying this for a while, and now the documentation is basically caught up where it is clear that this is going to be what they're going to do. It's the Biden administration that is in office as this takes place, as they create, as Smotrich calls, facts on the ground. If they don't want to use the power to do anything about it, I don't think they should get a vote of confidence for taking that behavior. But it's not just that. It's everything, right? Any interview and every interview that Kamala Harris has had, anything that you ask her, she basically brings up Trump. It seems that the thesis of the argument that the Democratic Party, particularly Kamala Harris, is making is Trump is worse. And because Trump is worse, I can just say Trump on any question that you bring up, any question that you ask me. Ted Rawl made the point of saying there's a Hillary Clinton energy associated with it. I don't think the Hillary Clinton energy is coming because she's a woman. I think the Hillary Clinton energy is coming because Hillary Clinton effectively had the same thesis. You may not like me, but that's Trump. He's worse. And so any argument comes up about Trump. Whereas in the 2016 campaign, if you would have looked at Trump or watched Trump's interviews at town halls, Trump was talking about the economy. I'm going to make a better economy. I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring back jobs. I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. Did he do those things? No. Was he ever going to do those things? No. But was he talking about those things? Yes. Yes. My point is, and I strongly suspect that part of the difficulty that Harris is having is that she cannot articulate what she's going to do. And people who are looking at her don't know what she's going to do. For example, in the New Yorker, I think I mentioned this yesterday. Right here. Bynor Berkeley, a former Obama administration official now in finance, told me that his firm spends tens of thousands of dollars a month of lobbyists and consultants, and yet, with all these fancy pants people, former members of Congress, nobody can tell me conclusively what she believes about anything. Think about that. We're spending thousands on lobbying for her, tens of thousands of lobbying for her. And we interact with members of Congress and everything else. But all things being equal, we have no idea what she is planning to do. I would argue that the issue for her is that you can talk about Trump all you want, but at the end of the day, I need to know what you are planning to do. And if I don't know that, it makes it very hard to put in a vote for you. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Back in a moment. All right. Welcome.
So this is going to be on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, this is going to be on my YouTube channel. So they, whoa.
Okay.
So, hold on. In fact, let me bring us in on this. Yeah, this is going to be on my YouTube channel. So, they destroyed Radio Sputnik, fault lines. And
Yeah, I saw what happened.
yeah, it is. It's just mind blowing when the U.S. government decides to go after a channel directly. It's like I feel like I'm a dangerous man or something like that. But let me introduce you. Let me bring you in so the audience will know who you are.
Guys, can I share this video later on my YouTube channel?
Absolutely.
After I post it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can share it. Give me 1 second. I just want to get my calendar up and introduce you. All right. We have Carl Zha. Carl Zha is host of the Silk and Steel show. Carl, better get, tell people about yourself, just so people, just so the audience will know who you are.
Hi, I'm Carl Zha. I am a podcaster and a prolific shit poster on Twitter. I My specialty is China. I mean, I run a podcast, a Silk and Steel podcast, which primarily focus on China, history, culture, and politics. This is my passion. If you want to have me talk about China, I can geek out on this for hours. Myself personally, I was born in China in 1976, 1 month after Mao passed away. So I'm the first post-cultural revolution generation in China. I spent my youth in China in the entire decade of 1980s, and then I came to the United States in 1990 to join my parents. My dad was studying in University of Illinois at Chicago since 1985. So second, I'm bicultural. I'm fluent in both English and Chinese, and I feel I have a lot to share because of my bicultural background.
Well, you do. Well, you do. I mean,
especially when there's a lot of ignorance about China, I feel like there's a lot of disinformation. When there's a lot of intelligence agencies in the West that's actively trying to pollute the well of information about China. So this is how I was compelled to start my own podcast to share my own perspective.
Well, I don't blame you. I understand where you're coming from with it. I mean, the reality of it is the United States has felt, let's say, what's the word I'm looking for? Competition. It has had a certain bit of apprehension. And you can hear it either in the politics, you can hear it in media, you can hear it in the things that the political branch says. I mean, for example, BRICS is a really good example. After the war started, the West says Putin is isolated, Putin is by himself, Putin is, alone in the world. And then you look at the BRICS summit, and you have like 46% of the world's population are represented at that summit. There are 30 different nations, I believe more than 30 nations. These guys are making deals. These guys are shaking hands. They're happy. They're laughing. They are in an organization that is fundamentally, I just want to check. I'm sorry, give me 1 second. They're an organization that fundamentally is working for their own best ends. And you can see the level of, I don't want to call it terror, but you can definitely see this notion where the United States feels that the horse is out the barn and that they need to do something about it. And by the way they're trying to do something about it is very similar to what's taking place in Ukraine. We are going to use Ukraine as a battering ram to undercut Russia. Okay, in the same way, we will say the one China policy, but we are going to do everything in our power to try to get Taiwan to be a battering ram to undercut the progress of China. Give me your take on that, by the way. They have this notion of we believe the one China policy while doing everything to indicate that they don't believe in the one China policy.
Born for China ever since 1949, the communist victory on mainland China. There is a period where the relationship start to normalize after Nixon's visit. So we had a brief period of U.S.-China honeymoon period, and then and then in around like in the late Obama years, there was a decisive shift in the U.S. approach to China. It's no longer engagement. It's now full on containment of China to stop China's progress. This is primarily driven by the U.S. elite trying to cling on the. Excuse me. The U.S. elite is trying to cling on to its hegemonic status all around the world. They feel the rise of China is an active threat, because here you have China that for the last 30 years that did not start any wars, did not participate in any wars, that was able to rise peacefully, and this fundamentally challenged the U.S. and the Western model. I mean, for the last 30 years, U.S. have been going around the globe wreaking havoc. This is why, as China rises and U.S. declines, you will see more and more copium being produced in the U.S. mainstream media about China, because what they're trying to tell the public is, look, if you think lives are bad in the United States, it's much, much worse in China. Don't look to China as an example. Do not think there's an alternative model of development. That's impossible. The United States here is the best you could get. What you see, what you get, and this is the best you could ever hope for. And that the idea that U.S. hegemony should be the norm, everyone should just accept it.
Well, Carl, wait, real quick. I want to double down on that, because you're right. They do make it is a weird case. Back in let's say the 80s, the Soviet Union is an Iron Curtain. It is a repressive regime that is not something that you want, and that argument worked. People will accept that argument. Then you get to today, and the world says, well, we want a multipolar world. We want a world of equal nations engaging with each other to the best interests of everybody. We don't want a hegemon. And the U.S. says, well, what do you mean you don't want a hegemon? A hegemon is, hegemons are good. Hegemons are good things. We should keep the hegemon. And the rest of the world looks at this like with a certain level of incredulity, saying, are you out of your mind? Why would anybody want a hegemon? You're right. That the argument that was made in the 80s is different than the argument that is made now. It's somewhat this kind of naked hegemony. We are number one. We are the greatest. We are exceptional. We're indispensable. I don't think the rest of the world is on board for that level of argument and to be put into this kind of second-class status, especially when you have other nations that are clearly rising and clearly equals, especially getting to the point of economic, industrial, and technical might and living standards. Carl,
this is why a lot of people in the global south in particular sees BRICS as an alternative international forum to the existing West and U.S. dominated institutions. And this is why U.S. feels the threat from organizations like BRICS, like Shanghai Cooperation Forum, like China's Belt and Road Initiative. They don't like alternatives where not only they're not part of, but they cannot dominate. And this, I want to go back to the one China policy for a moment, because United States adhere to one China policy as a consequence of Nixon's visit to China. That was to normalize the relationship between U.S. and China. And during the trip, Nixon and Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai, they signed what's called the Shanghai Communique. And underlying the Shanghai Communique, the Shanghai Communique says United States recognize there's only one China, and the government in Beijing is the sole legitimate government. The Taiwan Strait recognizes that there's only one China. And the U.S. recognizes this is an issue for the Chinese people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait to decide among themselves. This is not something that U.S. would interfere. That is a one China policy. The U.S. has decidedly moved away from that stance, which, by the way, is a foundational cornerstone of U.S.-China relationships since 1970s. And I want to quote Mao's quote from 1965 when he met the GLO delegation in Beijing. He told the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO delegates, he said, Israel and Taiwan are the basis of operation for imperialism in Asia. They created Israel for the Arabs and the Taiwan for us. They both have the same objective. And this still holds true today. U.S. is looking for proxies I mean, people say, oh, Israeli lobby hijacked the U.S. policy. That's bogus. Israel is not the tail that's wagging the dog. That's U.S. Israel and U.S. is the same dog. It's the same animal. The brain is all fused together. It's all connected. Israel is U.S. the tip of U.S. spear to destabilize the Middle East. The same way U.S. attempt to use Taiwan as a proxy versus mainland China. And more so today, now that U.S. has decided on a confrontational course with China.
Well, they don't believe that they could compete in real terms. It's that. Also, I don't think they expected that in 20 years, China would be able to pull out, 200, 300 million people out of poverty in 20 years. We spent those 20 years bombing, killing, sending weapons to this place and that place, getting $35 trillion in debt. China didn't spend their time doing that. They spent their time building, making associations, whether it's in Africa and other parts of the world. They've become the hub for the world, for things that people buy. If you go to your store, made in China. They found an economic model that was able to basically pull their people out of desperate levels of poverty. And I think from the United States, what they realize is industrial might translates into military might. I mean, if you think of the Second World War, for example, the United States wasn't a military country. We were an industrial powerhouse. And within a very short period of time, that industrial powerhouse started to arm the world. We had military, full-fledged military on two sides of the globe, fighting a war while also arming Britain, the Soviets, etc. That is an astonishing show of industrial might for a country of 320 million people. Okay, what does that look like when you have a country of 1.5 billion people? What does that look like? And then when you get technical prowess to go along with that, you get China putting people on the moon, trying to make a moon base. You get China and their relationship with the rest of the world. I mean, BRICS is more like 50% of the globe. In fact, China and India by itself is 50% of the globe. It's hard to get across the scale of this group and the scale of China by itself in regards to what they could accomplish if you put it in the context of, okay, well, what could the U.S. accomplish with their industrial might of 300 million when China has 4 times that amount? So you can imagine why there's a bit of apprehension in the U.S. and why they're looking for ways to undercut that. And again, as I point out, as you pointed out, proxies. We don't want to get into a direct war. However, we are okay with arming other people to get into that war, whether that's Ukraine, whether that's Taiwan, whether that's separatist groups in South America, like the kill squads that we used to pay and support. You're right. That's absolutely true. My question, which I'm fascinated by, China goes with this idea of a win-win relationship. That is the way they talk about it. That is the way they see it. We want to be partners around the globe. We don't want to put in military bases. We want to build roads, highways, etc. And we want to build relationships. All right. How does a country that believes in a win-win relationship deal with the country that is zero-sum? Because we don't believe in win-win relationships. We believe we are primary. We are indispensable. Everybody else is dispensable. We are not. So if China believes in a win-win relationship, how does it deal with a country that doesn't believe that and believes purely in zero-sum?
The $6 trillion question, Jamarl. I mean, Xi Jinping on various occasions have told U.S. representatives, whether Tony Blinken or Jake Sullivan, whoever's come visit, he said, the world is big enough for both China and United States to coexist and to prosper together. But that's not the mentality of the U.S. leadership. U.S. leadership only has this zero-sum hegemonic understanding of the world. It's like, okay, your loss is my gain, but on the China side, their door is always open. Even at the time when U.S. is closing door on Chinese investment, putting tariffs on Chinese products, China has welcomed U.S. businesses to come to China. You see Xi Jinping, you see they welcome Elon Musk, Bill Gates, etc. Like they are not opposed to do business with business. China is business. Business of United States is war. This is a fundamental incompatibility. But for China's side, their view is, you know what? If you build it, they will come, and they will always hold the door open for anyone who's interested to make a deal. This is why the Chinese model is holding a lot more attraction to what the U.S. has to offer right now, and this is why U.S. is panicking about particularly nations of global south coming together to hold their own forum. They talk about isolating Russia. When they talk about international community in the U.S. media press, they're really talking about Western Europe, United States, Australia, New Zealand, South Korea, Japan. All the U.S. Basically, U.S. and all the U.S. vassal states across Europe and Asia, and that's not the majority. Bigger than the BRICS. I mean, and it's much bigger than 50%. I mean, we're talking about global majority of 80% of the population. A lot of people right now they want to join BRICS, but they're being held back by the fear of United States, because U.S. tend to throw a shit fit whenever they see more countries join the BRICS. So there are people, that are kind of, they're very like Indonesia, they very much want to be part of the BRICS, but they don't want to offend the United States. So what they do is, they still, okay, you know what? Let's just do a stealth BRICS. We'll sign up with the Belt and Road Initiative project with China. We do business with Russia. We will welcome Lavrov with an open arm. I mean, Lavrov is a rock star when he goes to Indonesia. The people, the journalists here, they love him. But this is the side that we don't see much in the Western media. We try to project the enemy of the White House as these outcasts, the rogue states, like everybody pariahs. But that's so far from reality, especially in the global South.
You're absolutely right. I mean, again, Lavrov is an amazing diplomat, and he gets accolades. When he went to Africa, and all of those people were lining up to shake his hand and everything else, and the U.S. is like, Russia's isolated. No, you're absolutely right. Like you said, that's a $7 trillion question, and I'm fascinated by that question. Like, it's, look, part of the reason that we are heavy into war and the way that we're heavy into war is because it allows a certain measure of control. If that place is in chaos, we are primary. If we can bog this country down in a war, if we can make them use their resources for a war, then that is something that we don't necessarily have to deal with. So, our friends, we're going to keep our friends. Our enemies, we're going to demonize. We're going to try to find separatist groups. I mean, in Iran right now, where they're trying to use the MEK. MEK is a terrorist group of lunatics. And the U.S. still acts as if we're going to work with this group. Or even in Syria, where we were working with terrorists to try to undercut the Assad regime. And even now, sitting on oil and wheat in order to keep the government from coming back into fruition. China's model has been diplomatic relations and bringing down hostilities. So when Saudi Arabia and Iran got together, the world was like, whoa, when did that happen? The U.S. had nothing to do with it. And it just came out of the blue. You're getting India and China coming together. And I want to get your take on that. There were border disputes between India and China where the U.S. was trying to use India in order to basically antagonize China and Russia. And now you have the situation where Modi apparently is not buying into it. And Modi and Xi Jinping has apparently shaken hands and come to an agreement on the border issue. What is going on with that issue? And what was the ultimate agreement that they came to in order to settle the border disputes?
So India and China, their biggest disagreement is actually the border issue, the border dispute, which started, you know, before the founding of two nations. Actually, the border issue between India and China is a legacy of British colonialism in Southeast Asia. When the British came, when they took over India, made it British India, they start to encroaching on surrounding territories. That's when they start to push into Tibet. And this is at the time when China was weak under the Qing dynasty after Opium War, and there was not much China could do to resist the British aggression. So British would arbitrarily draw a line on the map and say, now this is part of our territory, you know, without consultation to either people on the ground living there or the Chinese. And so China never recognized those borders. And those then that border dispute got inherited when India became independent in 1947 following World War II, and then the establishment of People's Republic of China in 1949. Now there were attempt for border negotiations. You know, one of the deal that Premier Zhou Enlai offered in 1950 was like, okay, we recognize we have historical dispute, we have claims on the territory you control, and you have claims on territory. Why don't we just do a Solomon's justice? Let's not alter the line of actual control. You know, you like we just make the current line of control the international border. You know, so like I give up my claim on the territory you control, and you give up claim on the territory I control. So the existing actual line of control make an international border and no more dispute. But that was rejected by India because at that time Nehru was facing a lot of pressure domestically from its own opposition, who are actually want India to align more closely with the United States, because Nehru was pursuing a policy closer alignment with the Soviet Union at the time, but the opposition was accusing Nehru of selling out, you know, giving territory to the Chinese. So that border dispute was never resolved, and in fact that led to a brief war in 1962 between China and India over the border issue. Now there was always tension in the border. Now what United States try to do, you know, like they try to inflame these existing tensions, and they try to make loop India onto this anti-China bandwagon. The U.S. try to put together what they call the Quad of democracy: Japan, Australia, U.S., and India, to contain China. Now India has its own. I mean, India sees itself as a great power, inheritor of ancient civilization. India is not willing to be a pawn to United States. You know, India has its own foreign policy objectives as a great power. It doesn't want to be a mere proxy of United States. India is not going to fight U.S. war for the U.S. India is going to do what's best for India. So what happened then is during the Ukraine war, India said, look, we're going to stand by our old friends, Russia. We're going to continue to buy Russia, because they're like, okay, U.S. does not recognize partnership. They say call partner allies, but there's no partner or allies. They only recognize the master and the vassal relationship. So when India pushed back, U.S. imposed sanction on Russia. We saw a sharp downturn in the India-U.S. relationship. This is when you saw that now in Canada and U.S. are claiming India are sending assassins to kill Canadian citizens, to kill U.S. citizens. That's a big diplomatic role right now. That's a big so even India, who just want to be respected as a regional power, as a great power, United States is not willing to give that respect.
Carl, by the way, real quick, they did the same thing with the S-300. When India was about to purchase the S-300 missiles, the U.S. comes in and says, "Don't do that." And if you do that, we're going to pass sanctions on you. And now all of a sudden, Canada is kicking out somebody from India because they were trying to have assassinations and all this other. You're right. None of this stuff became an issue until the relationship between India, China, and the U.S. got closer. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's because US don't believe in partnership. It's like my way or the highway. So if India, you're not going to play by our rules on isolating Russia, we're going to try to play screws on you. And this is when India realized, you know what? I have alternatives. I can make up with. We don't have to have a confrontational relationship with China. So India and China sit down together and they work out an agreement to de-escalate the border tension, where both sides will pull back their border patrols, so they won't come in contact with each other, so there won't be any conflict. And this, this is a type of conflict resolution that's alien to Washington, because Washington always believe escalate, escalate, and escalate, and so we can sell more weapons for our military industrial. but then you have and working out a deal where peace is possible. And this makes U.S. edge. They're not used to this. They don't understand this mode of operation. The only way they understand is we're the top dog. We dictate to you, and you do what we say. It's either my way or the highway.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with you. But I don't think it entirely started off that way. I mean, again, we were somewhat of an isolationist nation at one point. And I think I think after the Second World War, where all of these institutions were set up, we're going to set up the UN, we're going to set up all of these trade bodies. That stuff was set up with the idea that we will remain top dog based on the institutions that are in place. So we can say, well, hey, we have these institutions, we have a rules-based order, etc., and we're just following the rules. Mind you, they set up the rules. Okay, fast forward to a situation where China gets more adept, gets more diplomatically adept, gets more industrially adept, and starts to dominate this notion of trade and this notion of industry and the international relations and everything else that's going on. And the US says, well, wait a minute, that's not right. You can make a car for $5,000. Well, we can't make a car for $5,000. We can't compete with that. Or you're making all of these relationships around the globe. You're making all of these solar panels. Yeah, climate change is a big deal, but we can't make a solar panel for that inexpensive. We can't put out that level of volume or that volume of steel. And so they started to get antsy with the way the world is set up. And when they felt like, okay, we are having difficulty competing under the model to which we set up, then we need to change the model. Hence, rules-based. Our rules can change at any particular moment, and we will go after China as an opposition or as opposing force. You get the TPP from Obama. We're going to do the Asian pivot. We're going to make associations with all of these nations in Asia in order to kind of cram out China. I think the issue is economic status. And in the economic sense, because we're having difficulty competing, Taiwan is now an issue. The Philippines is now going to be an issue. Bangladesh is now going to be an issue, especially when we can necessarily get India. And it seems that they are gearing up for war. And it's like the premise of it is pretty outrageous. If we can't be the hegemon, then we are willing to destroy the world. I think that is outrageous. And let me ask you this. Part of, I think, the U.S.'s apprehension is that they believe that China wants to be the new hegemon. Now, if you listen to somebody like John Mearsheimer, he would say, well, obviously, they're going to be the new hegemon if we're not. Is that the way China thinks, though, from your point of view? Is that the way China thinks, that we are going to be the new hegemon?
So I have a lot of respect for John Mearsheimer. He's a scholar. He understands the U.S. imperialism very well, and he analyzes it in great detail. The thing is, John Mearsheimer understands U.S., but he doesn't really understand China. So he assumes.
Well, real quick, Carl. Real quick. I mean, I always tell people when I do videos and stuff, I'm an American. My point of view is based on here and how we respond, how we outlook. And so when certain things come up, I would be like, well, obviously this is the case because I'm looking through my lens. And I think we're assuming that that lens is universal. That, obviously if a country is taking the lead, they're going to be a hegemon. Obviously, if they're in the prime position, they're going to take actions of countries that are in that prime position. But you're saying China is not that way. You're saying they're looking at this differently.
Well, I mean, look at the U.S. its own history and tradition. I mean, U.S. started as it's WASP, right? The white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and Protestantism is very much like a foundation for the early American state. And in the early days, America was sending missionaries going around the world trying to convert everyone to Christianity. And now we just substitute Christianity with slogans of democracy and freedom. But it's the same mentality. We believe the so-called universal value, that's American value imposed on everyone. And this is not how China works. China could care less about what you do in United States, what happens in United States. Americans really worry about like China is going to send paratroopers to in Appalachia. I see that kind of crazy talks on the Twitter. China could care less what you do in United States. What they want is to give their own people a more prosperous life. They want to build up China, to make China stronger, to make people inside China happier. That has always been their primary concern, right? But people like Mearsheimer, because their only frame of reference is from like the American U.S. centric worldview, so they assume U.S. is the norm. If anyone who comes to the U.S. position, then they must act exactly the way we do because they must see the world exactly the way we do. And that's just not true. China, they have different culture, they have a different tradition, they have different history. They see the world in the Chinese way, not the American way. And again, this is the whole idea of BRICS. This is why BRICS hold attraction for people, because BRICS is advocating for sovereignty. And the sovereignty means each state, each nation, they get to decide on their own what model of development they adopt, how they want to develop their own society without like a hegemon somewhere else telling them what to do. They're joining BRICS for exact reason. They're getting sick and tired of the U.S.-led, world order. Like U.S., by the way, it's like you said, it's undermining the institutions that it has helped to build since World War II. U.S. Helped build up UN, and now U.S. Obviously does not respect UN at all, and because it's they find the UN increasingly inconvenient when there's more now the global South are gaining voice, and so U.S. is actively sabotaging the institution it helped to prosper under the international frameworks that U.S. has itself helped to create. So now U.S. only talk about rule-based international order. Like Putin says, whose rules? Who are making those rules? And of course, it's people in Washington. They're dreaming everything from their head, and if anything that don't conform to their priority, then it's not rule-based international order. This is why this kind of hypocrisy is becoming increasingly apparent to the people of the global South, and this is why they're seeking alternatives. They are turning to Russia, turning to China, because what they had, IMF, World Bank, wasn't working for them. In fact, those are the real debt traps that have been trapping Africa in poverty for the last few decades.
So true. So true. And, especially with the Gaza issue, I'm going to let you go because we're coming to the hour, but especially with the Gaza issue, right? I mean, you get a situation where Russia goes into Ukraine. Mind you, the U.S. invaded Iraq. The U.S. knocked over governments in South America left and right. We destroyed Afghanistan. We destroyed Syria. Russia goes in because NATO expands to their border. They overthrow the government of Ukraine. They call it a revolution of dignity. And as it expands to the Russian border, they tried to put Ukraine in NATO. Russia responds. Now, when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened, we were willing to end the world in order to prevent additional missiles from the Soviet Union from getting into Cuba because it was basically on our border. They immediately would say, well, Russia doesn't have security guarantees. Russia doesn't get to say so, etc. John Kirby comes out crying on TV because of civilians. Israel goes on a killing spree, a murder spree in Gaza, in Lebanon, Syria, and even attacked Iran. And the U.S. doesn't say squat. In fact, they go and defend Israel's behavior for doing so. They kill, 20,000 kids in Gaza alone. That's a low count. That number goes 100,000, from 40 to 100,000 civilians, two-thirds of which are women and children. John Kirby was not on TV crying. In fact, John Kirby came out and said, well, war is war. It's a bad thing, etc., etc. When the UN passes a resolution saying we call for a ceasefire right now, and this is after the U.S. kept blocking resolutions, the U.S. comes out and says, well, that is, it was something like provisional, meaning the UN Security Council's resolution doesn't really have to be followed. Okay, well, that's pretty astonishing for a UN Security resolution to just be somewhat provisional, to just be an option to follow. That is not the way that necessarily works. I'm saying this to say, you're absolutely right. They destroyed the institutions that they helped create in order to maintain the world in the way that they wanted the world to be. And again, my point initially was, well, they set up those institutions because they knew they were going to be ahead of those institutions. Like I'm setting up a framework for us to operate in that's going to be fair and honest, knowing full well that you have every advantage in the context of that framework and that you're going to get political, diplomatic, and economic advantage. And when that no longer remains true, well, we need to have a different framework. Oh, I know, rules-based order. Yeah. Carl, thank you for this, man. I know it was at the last minute. I deeply appreciate this. Look, I would love if you would come to visit me like once a week to have this conversation. Because you're right. There is this kind of weird press against countries that we feel that we're in competition in. And it is exuded in the political space. It is exuded through media. It's ever present. It's astonishing. I mean, even the China virus thing, in the way that was talked about, in the way they used it to try to denigrate China. The rest of the world is not seeing it. And look, I don't have any enemies abroad. On things meaning I want to be friends with these countries. I don't think this way of war and everything else needs to stop. So, Carl, man, thank you for this. Carl Zha, I'm going to give your reading once I close it because I need to be able to see the calendar. But thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamarl. Invite me back anytime. I'd love to talk.
All right. So I'm going to close this. We have the one and only Carl Zha. I'm going to give his bio in a short moment as soon as I can pull that bio up. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you joining me, man. All right. We have come to the end of the hour. Let me see. I'm sorry. I need to pull the calendar up if I can do that. And give me 1 second, guys. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I'm sorry, guys. I'm having a bit of a bug. There we are. All right. Carl Zha. Carl Zha is host of a Silk and Steel podcast focused on China and surrounding regions and their history, culture, and politics. You can follow Carl on Twitter at Carl Zha. Follow his podcast on Twitter at Steel Silk In, and subscribe to the podcast at patreon.com/Silk in Steel. Carl, man, thank you for joining me. All right. I gave great attention and detail to ensuring that you guys can hear me all right. And I am getting an anomaly in regards to YouTube for some reason. Give me 1 second. So let's do this while I fix this and work this out. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to be back in a moment. We're going to keep the show going. Robin Beau, he is an Obama staffer, is coming up. We're going to have a conversation about the Kamala Harris campaign and figuring out what went wrong. How did it go so poorly? How did this where is it? How did this happen? How did this happen? Where you get what started off so promising with Harris, Biden withdraws, and you get this number. Harris 48, Trump 46. Then you even get this. Harris 49, Trump 47. And then, over the course of the month, it ending up with this. Now, the election is within 2 weeks. And what you're seeing here is Trump at his lowest at 46, climbing, bam, even race. Now, my argument would be that this is not an even race. When you get a situation of a momentum that's happening where there is a movement and a clear movement, then the issue is momentum. And he's getting momentum going into the final stretches of the race. That is not a good thing if your name is Kamala Harris. So let's take a break. I'll be back in a moment. There we are. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Show. Well, the Jamal Thomas Morning Show is more accurate to the point. In a moment, I'm going to bring on Robin Beau. We're going to have a conversation about what is taking place with Kamala Harris. As I was pointing out, her campaign seems to be lagging, and lagging is an understatement. And again, it's lagging in a way where you're getting Democrats just freaking the hell out. You get them saying that Trump likes Hitler, Trump is saying Hitler does good things and wants his generals to be like Hitler. You get Kamala Harris doubling down on that, coming out, giving a press conference about it. You get Hillary Clinton coming out saying Trump is going to have a Hitler rally. When people are invoking Hitler, that is extreme. You're talking about somebody that got 50 million people killed, put Jews in gas chambers, and they are trying to argue that Donald Trump basically is Hitler or loves the guy. Okay, good luck with that. For one, I don't think you're going to get any Republican voters saying that's okay. I think independent voters are probably not necessarily going to hear that. But again, the hysteria is coming because of numbers. And let's, even beyond the numbers, the trend line, which is this. Trump being in the depths, 46.3, 46.2, climbing. Now, you guys know my point of view. I don't like it either. I think the Democratic Party has lost its way, and that the only reason Donald Trump would ever even be in the political space is because the Democratic Party lost their way. Basically, the argument is the rise of the right has to do with the fall of the left. And you get moderate candidates. And when you get a situation in the country where the country believes that the moderate candidates are not dealing with their issues, dealing with their affairs, then you're going to get candidates that are on the outsides of what they call modern candidates who starts to get more airplay because people don't believe that the center is doing its job. Now, Trump, during COVID, got 1 million people killed. Trump didn't want to accept the election results. Trump and the things that he was saying caused a bunch of people on January 6th to rally and eventually raid the Capitol. If you don't put that on Trump, I would argue that what he was saying got those people there in the first place, whether he had anything to do with them raiding the Capitol or not. That, for me, is a deal breaker by itself. Donald Trump could be offering $1 million to each and every person that votes for him. The fact that he wasn't able to accept your election results is a deal breaker for me. We have a philosophical responsibility in regards to people who are running in races. That philosophical responsibility is when I lose, I walk away. There is so much power that's endowed in those offices that requires a norm. Meaning you don't want a country like you're in Africa somewhere where you have people going to war over who's going to lead. The entire premise of the political system is to avoid that. I've always made this argument that the biggest and the most important aspect of the political branch or our politics, especially when people run in races, is not the winner. The most important part is the loser. When that loser comes out, gives a concession speech, I lost my opponent. I know I said all of these bad things about him, but they won. They're in charge. Good day. And they walk out. The reason why that's so important is because A, it validates the fact that this other person won. It validates the political system that you are running in. And on top of validating the political system, it makes it clear that I, as leader of the losing party, accepts and acquiesce to the authority of the U.S. And in the context of that government that we're in, that other person won, that other person is in charge. We don't get here how fragile our political system is, or how fragile government is. Because we've been in it so long, it feels like it's static, it's real, it's this real thing. You can't put your fingers out and hands out and reach the government. It's purely a conceptual device. It's a conceptual device that we organize around because it is easier to deal with the system you got as opposed to trying to cobble something together that you don't. When Trump goes in and screams fraud up and cheated. It directly impugns and challenges the organization to which we have accrued around for the last, several hundred years. By the way, Clinton also did something like that by screaming the Russians did it. But if you notice, Clinton did it differently. Clinton said that Trump was working with the Russians. That argument brings up fraud, but it brings it up in a way that puts it on the political opponent as opposed to the political system that we are running in. There's a difference in the way they did it, even though both of them were doing the same things. Clinton would never impugn the political system because that's the system to which she runs in. We organize around, and there's a larger philosophical responsibility to not do that, which is why it's not typically done. Trump has done this country a disservice on an epic fucking level, which is why I always say voting for him is a deal breaker. That doesn't mean I'm voting for Kamala. In fact, my vote went in for Jill Stein. I had to write it in D.C. I don't like either. I think both are problematic. And the biggest issue with Democrats, there's never an autopsy. And every time they lose, they blame everybody else for their failings and their loss. It happened in every election. And I suppose in this one, it will happen again. Blacks were insufficiently loyal. The Russians got into people's head. Oh, Jill Stein, et cetera, et cetera. It is the only political party that blames everybody else for their loss. It is astonishing, it is weird, and they do it all the time. They blame Ralph Nader, despite the fact that Al Gore couldn't even win his own state. It's everybody else's fault, but their own. That needs to stop. And until there's some level of an honest autopsy, they would continue to slide and continue to not be able to beat somebody like this clown, Donald Trump. Let's take a quick break. I'm going to come back with Robin Beau. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Short break. Back in a moment. Welcome back to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show, the best damn morning show in the morning, anywhere you want to go. At the very least, in a political context, the best interviews and all that stuff, more analysis, better analysis, I would argue, than most. Give me 1 second. There we are. So we're waiting on a guest. We're going to be joined with Robin Beau. I am interested in this conversation. Give me 1 second. I want to make a bit of an adjustment, and this is going to look a little bit weird, so forgive me for the weirdness that this is going to look. That's not the weirdness that this is going to look. This is going to be the weirdness. All right. There we are. There we are. All right. So we are going to be joined with Robin Beau. I can make this full screen now without any weirdness. Excellent. So I'm doing all of this on my own, and it gets a little, I'm trying to find the best way to do it. That's why I said this week was going to be a work in progress. I appreciate all of you bearing with me as I do this and try to perfect the product. There's something else that I'm missing. Yeah, Robin Beau. This should be an interesting conversation. Robin has one of the issues that I'm having, and maybe one of you have a solution to this, is my volume periodically drops when I'm in interviews. There's no issue with it under normal circumstances. It's just the moment that you get into an interview, it plummets. And I don't quite know a solution to that yet. So what I am going to be is a hawk watching the volume key to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere and that it doesn't go down. When I listened to my interviews the other day, the interviews were great. Sloboda was on point. Many of the people were on point. And then I couldn't hear myself in the interview, even though when I'm doing commentary, I can hear myself just fine. So, guys, what I'm going to ask is that you share the content. I'm going to try to do Monday through Friday, every day. That is going to present some issues. I already can see it. Because the reality of it is, the mornings are tough for people. I wake up this early just because I'm so accustomed to it, but not everybody does. So, and I see that we have a guest. There we are. Let me make this right so both of us are side by side. Robin, can you hear me all right? Hey, there we are. There we are. How you doing, man? You're looking sharp today. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks. All festive for the season.
Excellent. Let's see.
How are you, sir?
There we are. Yeah, man, you look.
Thanks, bud.
So we
Fresh
have.
off
Fresh off of TV.
So let's do this thing. I got my coffee. You got your coffee.
All right. So the guest we have is Robin Beau. He is former Barack Obama campaign director, U.S. Army Ranger, veteran, and host of American Discourse podcasts. I am glad you could join me. Robin.
Look at that.
So, Robin, I have been fascinated by what has been taking place. Women. I've been fascinated by what has been taking place in regards to the election. Oh, I have a,
Yes.
wait a minute, 1 second. I have a echo. There we are. Yeah, what has been taking place in the election? There seems to be a certain level of panic that has taken place in the Democratic Party that has been pretty astonishing to look at. From your point of view, in fact, I was showing the audience the polling on Real Clear Politics where you can see this trend line that's taken place in regards to the Harris campaign and Donald Trump. It's not that Trump has pulled out in this kind of immaculate lead. Is more so that you could see the momentum going in real clear politics where it's trending up, up, up. And over the last month have basically broke even. And when you're looking at the most recent polling, not just even, Donald Trump has been leading many of those polls. I guess the first question is, why do you think that's happened? Meaning her honeymoon seemed to have ended. And she's doing all of these interviews. These interviews are not necessarily going all that well. By the same token, Donald Trump is completely incoherent. It's not like Donald Trump is just doing something great on the campaign stage. He's all over the place.
He really is.
I've not necessarily heard a coherent anything from him. Meaning, there's nothing happening with Trump. And yet, this does seem to be the slide. Why do you think the slide is taking place? Or for one, do you even believe there's a slide?
Well, the polling does indicate that. The polling has tightened. You can see that in national polling, she's polling marginally ahead, but that doesn't make a hill of beans difference, because if you go to 538.com or really any reputable site that compiles aggregate polling, you'll see that out of the 7 swing states, 4 of them right now are neck and neck, a wash basically, and she's carrying one and he's carrying the rest. So it's going to be about electoral college math. I just want to say that what I think happened here, I've heard from so many friends that Donald Trump has been sending out the Trump campaign within just a couple of weeks from the Trump campaign and none from the Harris campaign. The Harris campaign is overspending by 3 to 1 on Trump, and we're raising 3 times more money, but they're investing in commercials. I myself, look, I'm a 2-time failed candidate. I've lost 2 elections, and I told my campaign manager this second election, it comes down to direct mail, especially turning out the older folks. So they've got to get on the ball here with direct mail and reaching out to the universe of voters, because let me tell you what I found so fascinating. If you look at 2016 and what happened with Hillary Clinton, she got about 25.3% of voters out. Donald Trump got 24.2%, and over 46% of registered voters did not vote. They did not turn out. So it's all about trying to engage that universe of voters, because it's almost half of the folks out there don't even show, they're registered to vote and don't show up. And if he's sending direct mailers, that might very well encourage them.
Yeah, it makes a difference. Wait a minute. There we are. Yeah, it makes a difference. Robbie, give me 1 second. I just want to update something. I'm trying to get this correct. Give me one moment.
Love the hat. That's fun. I love it.
Thank you. Give me 1 moment. I've been trying to figure out how to perfect this process, doing it all alone. I use that engineer.
It is a process. Yeah, I've got a podcast. I know what the process is. Yeah.
All right. So there we are. That's a little bit better. There we are. Excellent. Better. All right. Look, you have a full agreement on this. I don't get it entirely. She seems to. It's super bizarre to me. And then you get Hillary Clinton out. I mean, they have gotten shrill in the stuff that they're saying. Donald Trump likes Hitler. Not just likes Hitler. You have Kamala Harris doubling down on the Trump and Hitler. You have, fascism. You have Joe Biden claiming that Donald Trump wants to put people.
Look, I don't like the name.
Yeah, exactly. Name calling when Trump does it, and I don't think it's going to be flattering at all for Kamala Harris to be doing it. But look, I looked up the definition, the textbook definition of fascism, and it said a fascist is someone who embraces aggressive nationalism and utilizes dictator tendencies to suppress the opposition. I definitely know that Donald Trump seeks to oppress the opposition, and he said he wanted to be a dictator on day one. So does she have a point? Kind of. I don't think it's going to resonate with voters to call him a fascist, which she did 4 times during that town hall. I think that a lot of times people don't even know what that fascist is. They just know that we fought them in two different wars. Uh, uh, you know, they think fascism's bad, and it is, and that's why Kamala Harris has been saying that. But if the shoe fits,
Well, I mean, they've gone further. They calling him a fascist. Hillary Clinton, I mean, they went so far as to say, well, Kelly says that Trump likes Hitler, that Hitler had good ideas. Hillary Clinton doubles down on it, said he's going to have a Hitler rally, and that people who are coming out there are basically Nazis. Um, this reeks of desperation to me. If Let me ask you this: if you think that he may be a fascist, what did he do? Because he's been in office. What has he done?
aside from he had 92% staff turnover, so he was trying to find loyalists. And I know that he's tried to distance himself from Project 2025, but Project 2025, if you read it, it does call for everybody to be vetted to make sure that they're loyal. So maybe he didn't have fascist tendencies before, but I think getting burned and having lost for re-election, maybe now he's wanting people. Look, we know that the man values loyalty. He wants loyalists. I think that you're slipping into some territory there where it could look like fascism. But you're right. I don't think that he was there before. But, you know, he.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Kamala Harris has also had like a 90% staff turnover with people saying that she is.
Same number.
Right. With people saying she has been somewhat of a difficult person to work with and everything else. And again, I guess my thing is, when I brought people on last time, I would ask them, okay, what did he do in the office that was fascist? And I guess I would ask you the same thing. What has he done in office that indicates he's a fascist?
No, he didn't do anything in office that indicates it. It's what's being arranged right now in terms of Project 2025, which, like I said, he sought to distance himself from. But his name's all over it. 270 times it's mentioned. And J.D. Vance literally wrote the foreword to Project 2025. So, I mean, there is a fascist playbook out there. But whether or not they're going to use it, who knows? He says no. He says he hasn't even seen it.
Well, see, that's the rub. With
900 pages, I don't think he read that.
Well, that's the rub, right? Donald Trump lies so much that there's no way to take him seriously one way or the other, right? And that's the argument I used to have with Malik. Malik was like, well, Trump keeps distancing himself from it. I said, yeah, but Trump lies constantly. I mean, you know, they're opening the jails and letting insane asylum into the United States. Okay, no, they're not. They're not doing that. I'm going to solve the issue with Ukraine overnight. No, you're not. Like, he lies constantly. Which is why I keep getting to the thing of, why do you think that she is having such a difficult time in this race against somebody like Trump? And the reason why I bring this up, Democratic Party doesn't seem to want an autopsy, meaning they don't seem to have this notion of being able to evaluate how they're acting in the larger world and how the larger world sees them. I've had these conversations with Democrats. They would say, well, because people are racist, bigoted, sexist, they are indoctrinated with misinformation, and if they just knew what was good for them, they'd vote for Democrats. And as I point out to them, okay, that is such an elitist point of view that you are in a bubble and you don't see how other people view you, and there doesn't seem to be an autopsy. It's either Jill Stein's fault. No, go for it.
Yeah. Oh man, you are speaking some harsh truths here, but they are truths. And I was political director for Fulton County Democratic Party for I think 6 years. So that was during Hillary Clinton's race. And we, of course, did quite an autopsy with that. But party doesn't really want to hear it. We've got a splintered, fractured party. The far left is still very much not aligned with the centrists who comprise the majority of the Democratic Party. But, you know, what I'm seeing right now every day on Facebook are my friends fighting with one another about Palestine and Israel and things like that. And it's definitely not helping the Democratic Party. I definitely have friends in real life who are Democrats, have always voted Democratic, and we'll be voting for Jill Stein as a protest vote this time to show them and teach the Democratic Party a lesson. So, they exist. I know them. And we could very well lose this thing. That's a very real possibility. I will be giving live coverage on election night in New York City, and I'm trying to face the reality that we may, in very real time, lose this thing, and I'll be stuck there on live national television to deal with it.
I mean, they don't see it. I mean, like the Israel-Palestine is a really big deal, and my thesis of it, and the reason why I think she's starting to lag or fell apart, was because in the very beginning when she got in, it was like, oh my God, she's young, she's black, she has mixed heritage. She's a woman. This is something fundamentally different. This is something fundamentally new. And that newness is effectively what they wanted. They wanted something different. Joe Biden was going to lose in a landslide. Harris comes in, fresh of breath air. Then you start asking Harris questions like, what would you have done differently over the course of the administration if you were president? Nothing. Okay? What will you do differently going forward? Meaning, what is your newness? Nothing. Been the same Joe Biden, and I would keep going with Joe Biden. So you get 60 to 80% of the public saying the country is going in the wrong direction. Joe Biden was going to lose in a landslide. And your response to all of this is, I'm going to maintain what Joe Biden has done. That is deeply problematic, especially for a country where you get 60, 80% saying, we want something fundamentally different. This country is going in the wrong direction. If you are basically saying, yes, I'm embodying this wrong direction that we're going, you're going to fail. The Israel-Palestine thing is just one item of that, where, the plight of the Palestinians is so bad, but you got to remember October 7th, as if all of this started on October 7th. And whether she realizes it or not, the people who strongly are in this issue and believe in this issue, I'm being one of them, knows that it didn't start on October 7th. Israel has been running an open-air ghetto for the last 60, 70 years. Or not 60, 70 years, but this issue has been going on for like 60, 70 years, going back to the 1940s. So pretending as if it all started on October 7th is a deal breaker for many of the people that are in the context of the party, especially the people who should need to vote for her. So it becomes this kind of unsatisfying thing that creates a division in the context of the party itself, where she really needs the party to be in alignment. Give me your take on that before we go forward, because I want to go to some of the CNN stuff, because again, she does not do herself any favors in these interviews. Give me your take on what I just said, though.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And she's been having to ride a tight line on this because, like I said, the far left, just look at what I found really interesting, Jamarl, was that their Free Palestine, hashtag Free Palestine, was trending. It had 37 million hashtags. And Free Palestine only had 8 million. So she's got that weird, I think she knows that. The campaign knows that. And they're trying to walk that line of, okay, the far left are really activated about Palestine and what's happening with.
Wait, Robin, I hate to interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt. But she's not walking the line. I mean, the Biden administration went with this, meaning you have to cut the rhetoric on that, meaning which her. In a way, she is somehow different. Because otherwise, they're going to say, okay, well, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris has been dealing with this for a year. They've been saying the same thing for a year. Nothing has changed on this. They've given Israel any and everything that they've wanted to murder 40,000 people as a low end and to go into Lebanon and to basically provoke a larger war. Meaning they know that Hamas was open for a deal at one point and that Netanyahu murdered the lead negotiator of it. Meaning regardless of what language they use, those people that are involved in this issue knows. And unless she can give even a different rhetoric for it, they're not going to buy it. So it's like, I don't consider her walking a line on this. Or if you want to say she's walking a line, it's a line that is the exact same line as Joe Biden. And it was unsatisfying for them.
And look, she was asked about that by Anderson Cooper. I know we're about to talk about the CNN town hall. She was asked about that by Anderson Cooper. And what she said was that she brings her own ideas and experience to the table. Sure, that's true. But she was part of the Biden administration He picked her for a reason because her values aligned with his for the most part. I will say that when you look at her 2020 campaign, when she herself ran for president, it's quite a bit different than what we have now with the current administration. I found her to be far left before. She does come from San Francisco. I think that I've always said that California Democrats are sort of on a different level than the rest of the country. Of course, I'm speaking to you from Atlanta, Georgia. We're a little bit more centrist here. What flies over in San Francisco, California is not going to fly here in Atlanta, Georgia. But will it be the same? By and large, yes. Will there be differences? Of course, because she does bring her own experiences and ideas to the table. But I already know that for a fact that she's going to keep a majority of the Biden administration cabinet members in place because it will be so difficult to confirm new ones through Congress. They will fight that. And the ones are doing a pretty solid job. So she's going to hit the easy button on this and keep almost all of the Biden administration cabinet members.
So we were having a thing on. So we mentioned Gaza. So let's go to the clip because I think she was asked that twice on the Anderson Cooper interview. And by the way, they're attacking Anderson Cooper. Anderson Cooper came out, I think this was yesterday, saying, I don't watch MSNBC. All of these people are attacking me for their interview. He just did an interview. So let's go to this clip. This is clip number 8. I think it's this one, if I get it right. I want to make sure you can hear this clip. You may not be able to see it, but the audience can see it.
Or staying on the couch, not voting at all because of this issue?
Listen, I am not going to deny the strong feelings that people have. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died and been killed. And I know people and have talked with people. So I appreciate that. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care about our democracy and not having a president of the United States who admires dictators and is a fascist. They also care about the fact that we need practical, common sense solutions from a leader who is willing to work across the aisle on behalf of the American people and not themselves. They want a president who cares about a fundamental freedom to make decisions about your own body, understanding that we're not trying to change anyone's belief, but let's not have the government telling women what to do with their.
All right.
That was sort of all over the place.
Right. So to boil it down, hey, what do you tell people like me who are going to vote third party because they care so much about what we consider to be a genocide? And her answer is, well, look, man, people need to get abortions. Or people need to, prices are high. And what she doesn't seem to quite get is for many of these people, it is a moral issue. Meaning the moment that you said this is a genocide and we should be against genocide, and you tell me, hey, man, but groceries are too high. Hey, 40,000 people are being killed in mass. Like if they are slaughtering people, people are being burned alive. Yeah, I know, but abortions and the inflation and everything else. Is there a better way to answer that question? Give me your take.
Oh, absolutely. There's a better way to answer that question. And look, we've seen it time and time again. I already voted for Kamala Harris, in full disclosure, but we've seen it time again where she gives a great answer when it's scripted, when she has it memorized in her head. It's the prosecutor in her. She has the answers in her head already mapped out. But when she's called on something that she wasn't planning on getting asked, we get this word salad, which is what we just heard, because the answer that we just heard there, if you dissect it, like you said, she talked about the cost of groceries being too high and women's bodily autonomy. Sure, we can agree on those things maybe, but that has nothing to do with mass genocide across the world. And she did not answer the question. There was absolutely a better way to answer that. But I want to give credit to Anderson Cooper because he did his job. He pressed hard on those questions And that wasn't the only question he pressed hard on. He pressed hard on immigration also, and doubled down. Like, he didn't accept when she gave sort of non-answers. He did his job, and doubled down and said, well, okay, you didn't answer that. I'm going to ask it a different way. And I appreciate that and respect that. So I'm embarrassed that he's getting attacked because he just did his job.
It's like, it's not his fault. He did his job as a moderator. He just asked the questions that people wanted to know. And I give you another one, immigration. That was another one of the questions that came up that was kind of funny, actually. I mean, and there were a few ways that he asked this one. One was about building the wall, where he's like, effectively, you mock Trump on building the wall, but you yourself are going to build the wall. This is, let's see, vote. This was number 3, I believe. I have like a ton of these clips. I think it's this one.
Is a border wall stupid? Well, let's talk about
Border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall.
Yeah. I mean, so it's like, so you don't think that's stupid now. You think that's a really okay idea after calling it stupid. And that kind of hurts, right? That kind of bites. It's like, in the very beginning, you said that building this wall was a stupid idea. Now, all of a sudden, you think it's okay, and you plan on doing something similar in your administration. Yeah, that doesn't look good. I mean, and there was another, but I want to get your take on that first. I mean, because look, I don't have an issue with building the wall or anything else, but Democrats acted like, oh, this is the worst thing in the world that Donald Trump is doing, and he's building a wall because he's racist. Hillary Clinton, Obama, all of these people were for building a wall or a gate or something. So this notion that it's inherently racist because Donald Trump wants to do it, come on. And that was the point Anderson Cooper was making in that question. Oh, so you're going to build the wall too. So Rob,
no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. And look, I'm actually glad that she brought up the fact that Obama started building the wall, because as a Democrat strategist on national television, I have really strived to be intellectually honest about this, because I supported that under the Obama administration. So because of that, I also supported it under then President Trump. And now the Biden administration did block it for the first 3 years of his administration. But now they've allocated millions of dollars toward continuing the border wall. But, you know, I'll say this, I'm an Army Ranger veteran, and a wall is like your front door. And I lock my front door at night. It's your first line of defense. It can't be the only line of defense, but it is something that is a method and means to defend our country and make sure that people can migrate here legally through asylum or other means. So, you know, I'm just glad, honestly, at the end of the day, that she brought the fact up that, look, Obama started this. But Anderson Cooper was absolutely dead right on pressing her about this, because she was against this before she was for it. And that's never a good look. That's why people get called flip-floppers. That's why Mitt Romney lost the 2012 election.
That's so true. That's so true. I guess my thing is, her thesis is a new way forward. And from my point of view, lean into that. But it's almost like she's so tethered to Joe Biden. You know what? I think Joe Biden did her a disservice. For one, Joe Biden should have stepped down in the very beginning, meaning they should have had a primary, for one. Two, he should have stepped down as president and let her take over the mantle. A president has a much better chance of winning a race as opposed to a VP. And three, by being tethered to him, she feels, or at the very least it seems like she feels like she can't unmoor herself from Joe Biden. So she seems to be kind of soaking in the same stew that whatever Joe Biden had. So she can't extricate herself from him, pull away from him in some kind of real policy way that would at the very least come across as being a new way forward. What's your take on that? I mean, is it possible for a VP to separate themselves from the president while the president is still there?
Look at this one thing I want you to think about. Have you seen Joe Biden at any of her rallies? Has he been on the stage even once to help support her? No. And it's shocking because you would expect that if the situation was anybody different. So in some respect, yes, she's trying to distance herself. But like I said, she's planning on keeping the majority of the Biden administration cabinet right in place so that they don't have to go through the confirmation process. So it's one of those things where you hear the words, but you have to look at the actions also. And that's where she's got a problem. And we have to be intellectually honest about that.
Well, I mean, the wild part is when people ask her, okay, well, what's the new way forward? Is it on immigration? Well, she wants the immigration bill that was going to pass during the Joe Biden administration. When they ask her on policy, well, she doesn't really go into policy. She attacks Donald Trump. And that was kind of the biggest criticism of CNN. Most of the time, when you ask her something, she goes to Trump. And I remember Ted Rawl was here yesterday. He was like, there's a Hillary Clinton energy about it. Like this idea of, Clinton was different though. Clinton would give you a policy prescription for everything. You know, it's like, if some of the stuff was ghastly, yes, we want to need to put missile systems in Syria. I was like, okay, that's ghastly, but she's going to tell you exactly what she's going to do. Hillary Clinton had her like a body of ideas. She had been soaking in that stuff for a long time. I don't get that sense for Harris. There's New Yorker came out with a piece, and the audience can see it. You can't see it, but I'll read it up. It says, a former Obama official, now in finance, told me that his firm spends tens of thousands of dollars a month of lobbyists and consultants, and yet all of these fancy pants people, former members of Congress, nobody can tell me conclusively what she believes about anything. Now, maybe if there was a primary process, that wouldn't have been the case. Maybe.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for months. That the Democratic Party did that. We did that to ourselves. What happened in 2016 with Donna Brazile kind of pushing out anybody else so that Hillary Clinton could have could get the nomination. So we've done this before to ourselves, and we're doing it again. We did this by not having a primary process so that we could hold this over to her on a silver platter.
I guess wait, real quick. I guess my question is why though? I mean, like, what is it? Is it just that?
Because politicians and people in power think they know better than the American public. That's part of the reason why we have the Electoral College, and that's why the Electoral College was put in place, was to prevent us from electing an idiot. So I honestly think that these politicians think they're doing us a service because they truly think they know better than the American people, and they're worried about what would happen if we had an open primary. And that's just not right. That's not the way to do things.
It is wild to me. It is. I think the party's in deep need of an autopsy. And when you're talking to Democrats, it is weird. Like, I got to be honest, I've had easier times talking to Republicans on stuff that I disagree with. We just disagree. There's no issue. But with Democrats, it's different. It's like there's this kind of weird thing that comes in as if, well, I'm clearly no better. I'm clearly right. I am clearly somehow morally and ethically more intact and more on it. And if you don't agree with us, then it becomes that, which is a very weird place to be in. And I remember calling when I say, you guys are elitists. You guys are missing the point. You're in a bubble. I was like, and I would ask a basic question. Why is it that the majority of the public sees you that way? Keep in mind, we're talking about a blue collar billionaire running around screaming that he is, the avatar of the working class. The man is a billionaire with another billionaire giving him $75 million and another one giving him $100 million, Miriam Anderson, and for that matter, Elon Musk, with $100 million if he would annex the West Bank. He has been able to take this mantle of, I am the avatar of the middle class. I believe in the working man. I am this. I am that. The Democratic Party used to be the party of the working class. It was known and it was understood. If you're looking at Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania went to Democrats for the last 50 years. Republicans might have gotten it like once. If you're looking at Congress, going back to 1995, before 1995, the Democrats had Congress for 50 years, with the exception maybe once or twice. And I'm talking about the House of Representatives. When Bill Clinton gets in, it goes back and forth, becomes a teeter-totter, and it's been that way ever since. How on earth did the Party of Unions lose that Party of Unions to the working class? When I ask a typical Democrat that, their only answer is misinformation. What's your thoughts?
No, that's not true. If there's one thing that I strive to be when I do podcasts and television, and that's intellectually honest, whether or not it's going to make the party look good or bad, it's just important to be honest about these issues. And the problem here is that we've lost a chunk of the blue collar vote because we've been talking about issues that really aren't important to them. She said that she started to address it, the kitchen table issues, the cost of things, inflation right now, whether or not how your 401k is doing. These things affect folks who are blue collar workers. The price of groceries when you go to the grocery store, all of these things. But what I swear to you, I pay attention to every Trump rally, every Harris rally, and what she gets stuck on. And some strategist has told her that she needs to focus on abortion as her main issue, but that's not going to really resonate with middle class blue collar workers. They're really concerned about the kitchen table issues. So that's why we're in the pickle that we're in, and that's what's been happening these last couple of years. And before that, it was wedge issues like LGBTQ rights and gay marriage. We picked these little things to stick on, and we're not looking at the big picture. How many very little, because we could talk about the fact that Donald Trump expanded the national deficit by $8.4 trillion. 4.8 trillion of that was before COVID was a thing. And the Biden administration did pass legislation to reduce it by $1.91 trillion, while at the same time growing it by $2.2 trillion. So a net, it was still rose by a net few hundred thousand. But these are things that she could talk about. She could talk about, and honestly, be intellectually honest here and say, just like I said, he grew the deficit more than any president since Obama in 2008.
Just to put a thing on that. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you remember when before Donald Trump came in, you had this situation where I believe it was Obama was in, and you had all of these Republicans saying, we are not going to raise the debt by 1 red cent. I'm not going to put 1 nickel on the backs of my grandchildren. Donald Trump wins. They immediately increase the deficit by $9 trillion, meaning the debt limit by $9 trillion. Donald Trump comes in past.
Because James Carville famously said, strategist James Carville famously said in 1992, it's the economy's stupid. We know this. It is the economy. And we could talk about the deficit. You could talk about the fact that the per taxpayer share of the federal deficit is $241,000 for everyone that votes. For every man, woman, and child, it's $109,000. That's a debt that we're passing on to our nation's children. I would love for a Democrat, specifically Kamala Harris, to say we've got to do something about the deficit. That is a way to talk to blue collar voters and swing voters and people who, like I said, the 46% who are registered to vote who don't show up to the polls. But instead, we're talking about wedge issues still.
Well, it doesn't even come up. I mean, we're $35 trillion in debt. And I think under the Biden administration, I think it was like $2 trillion this year, something to that effect. But again, Donald Trump increased $9 trillion. $9 trillion. And those things were tax cuts. It was like, we're going to give tax cuts to the rich. It doesn't come up. It's a very bizarre thing.
Yeah.
I want to show another clip. So this is, I mean, there's so many of them, right? So this is a woman, again, asking about Gaza, honestly asking about Gaza. And right here, let me see. Okay, good. The audience can see it. And let's go.
The question is, as president, what would you do to ensure not another Palestinian dies due to bombs being funded by U.S. tax dollars?
So I will say, and I think this is to your point, far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. It's unconscionable. And we are now at a place where with Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief to the Palestinian people, and work toward a two-state solution where Israel and the Palestinians in equal measure have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination.
The problem with that answer is that's the same thing that Joe Biden has been saying the entire way through. And because it's the same thing that Joe Biden has been saying the entire way through, it doesn't, like, I guess my key point is there is a segment of people who are like me who thinks this is unconscionable. And because we think it's unconscionable, we look at the Biden administration, because he's in office, and saying, look, you are giving them money, you're giving them weapons, you're giving them political clout. Even in the UN Security Council, when they finally passed a resolution for it, they said it's a, quote, non-binding resolution. That's pretty astonishing. It's the UN Security Council, but apparently it's non-binding. Meaning, from our point of view, the Biden administration has wed itself to the Netanyahu government that comes across as a maniac. And at some point, we could say, okay, we'll stop sending the money, we'll stop sending the weapons, we're passing a weapons embargo. We're not doing any of that. The reporting is contradictory. I mean, the reporting even came out that the Biden administration was okay with Netanyahu going into Lebanon, despite the grumbling that's taking place in the open. I agree that the relationship between the United States and Netanyahu might be challenging, just because from Biden's point of view, look, man, you're making my job harder. I'm giving you hints that you need to slow down in Gaza. And Netanyahu's doing everything in his power to humiliate Joe Biden. It is the first time I've seen a president look that weak. It's humiliating on some level. And Netanyahu clearly wants Trump to win. And yet Joe Biden still takes this tact where he's doing everything in his power to help Netanyahu, despite the fact it is not helping him politically. It is weird. I guess my question is, why? You, friend, in these political races, it's obvious that this is not necessarily doing him any great favors by taking this particular tact. So why is he taking this tact? Like, what? Like, does he really believe that he is going to be punished for saying, look, this has gone too far, and I am stopping the weapons that are going? The overwhelming majority of the American public is thinking this is going too far, or at the very least thinks that the United States maybe shouldn't play this big a role in it. It should be a role and a factor for peace. Do you think he would be punished to that degree? Meaning, do you think he would be punished more than it would help if he calls for a weapons embargo, if he puts constrictions or restrictions on what's given? Hey, you need to let humanitarian assistance in, or otherwise you're not going to get the weapons. Hey, you need to bring this to a close, or otherwise you're not going to get the weapons. You're not going to get the money. Do you think he'd be punished more, or it would hurt more than it would help if Harris takes that tact? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, One thing that I know for sure is that whatever move they made on this would be criticized heavily by the Republicans, whether or not they talked to Netanyahu and worked with him or not. They would be criticized and spun as a negative. Rightly so, because this is an election season and you do what you got to do to win an election. So I get it. So yes, it would. But what I'm not seeing from this administration right now, and that courage on this, and I'm just not seeing a profile on courage on this issue, and I can't really make sense of it, to be completely transparent. Would they be punished? They would be punished by Republicans no matter what they did. Would they be punished by Democrats? No. Democrats are still going to support them pretty much no matter what. Even my friends in the party who are very critical about what they're doing with the situation are still there voting for them, distributing yard signs, canvassing, phone banking. Like I said, it's a very small group that are on the farthest left who I've noticed of my friends who were, Bernie Sanders supporters specifically, and some Hillary Clinton supporters that are completely horrified with what the administration has been doing or not doing specifically, and talking to Netanyahu and all that. So yeah, they would lose that group, but I would argue that we never really had them to begin with. I'm not sure in 2016 if they voted for Hillary Clinton even, or wrote in Bernie Sanders. As we saw, there were a whole bunch of write-ins in 2016, and we could argue all day long whether or not that's why we lost. But what we need is a profile on courage from Harris and Biden. I'll take one or the other. Just give me a profile on courage.
Last question, Robin. If you were able to have the ear of the Harris campaign, and you were able to give them, look, this is a prescription to turn this around. You have 2 weeks to go. We got to do something different. The way we're going right now, it's not working. And I can show you the polling thing where you could see Trump being down at like 45, 46.2, and then it starts to trail up, tick up until the point where it is an even race with Donald Trump having the momentum going into the final 2 weeks. What would it be? What would you tell him? What would you, like, if looking from the outside, because sometimes giving an outside perspective is a better perspective, right? How do they turn this around? I have my own ideas. I think a moment of truth is required. This kind of transparent honesty of, look, this is what we've been doing, but this is what we're going to do going forward. We're going to do something different. We're going to have a message to America, or what was the thing that Newt Gingrich did? A contract with America. We're going to have a new contract with America, and I, as your president, is going to do X, Y, Z, and we've done these things wrong, and we need to do something different. Like, basically, this level of radical transparency in regards to, this is what we did wrong, but this is what we're going to do to correct it. That's my thought. What are your thoughts on this? How would they right the ship?
Yeah, I would love that if they would say that, and they do need a catchphrase that's going to land. But like I said, they are not doing, this campaign is just not doing a good job of touting their own achievements, even on the economy. There's plenty to boast about. The S&P is doing better than it has in 37 years. Right now, the stock market's doing fantastic. NASDAQ's doing great. The economy, inflation is down. I think it's around 3.3% right now, which is better than our peers across the globe. They have things that they can run on. And, Jamarl, they planned on running on these things because, lest we forget, Bidenomics was the term that they rolled out when Joe Biden himself was running for a re-election. Where is that now? They don't talk about the economy. If we lose this election, I will blame that. I will blame them for not talking about the economy and kitchen table issues. They can talk about the deficit. And I would say in terms that just the common person could understand, we borrowed $9 trillion under the Trump administration and from China and Japan and the UK. And if you yourself borrowed hundreds of thousands of dollars, you could fake being rich. You could fake a good economy. You know what I mean? We faked it. We faked that robust economy. And you could do that too. That's what happened. But we're going to bring that down. We've worked in this administration to bring it down. And I will continue to do that. That would be a winning message. It would get some of that universe of 46.3% registered voters who just don't turn out.
46 million people said, there's nothing for me to vote for. I don't see a difference between the two. Look, man, I would put it on that. I wouldn't put it on Joe Stein. I wouldn't put it on anybody else. If you get like 48 million people who don't vote, okay, well, that's your voting block. That's the people who checked out of the system for one reason or another. That is a massive deal that half of the country just said, I don't see a point. Robin, always appreciate you, man. Like I said, you're looking sharp today. I really appreciate you joining me. Robin Beau, he's a former Barack Obama campaign director, U.S. Army Ranger veteran, host of the American podcasts, and honest actor. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you joining me. All right, guys. I am going to take a quick break while I reset, and we are going to be back in a moment. Thank you, Robin. All right. Welcome back to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show, the best damn morning show in the morning. Look, I want to, if you guys enjoy the content, give me a like, share the video. You can always support, of course, donate through Super Chat, Patreon, or for that matter, PayPal. Any of those help. Even if you don't do that, definitely give it a like. Definitely give it a like. It helps the content. Definitely share it. It helps the content. You can share it right now if you want, wherever you are, whether you are on your cell phone, whether you're on, well, you can't share it if you're, driving in a car or something like that. I don't want you to hit anybody. I don't want you to hurt anybody, yourself, nor anybody else. But definitely share the content. I am doing my damnedest to grow this show, grow this channel. I want more people to be able to watch in the morning. I know that being at 7 a.m. is somewhat of a challenge, and I know that's going to affect the number of people who are watching it at any one time. But I've gotten so accustomed to waking up this early for the radio, and it's a space that not many people occupy. Meaning, there are not many people that are going to be around at 7 a.m. in the morning in regards to their channel because they don't want to be up this early. My hope is that people are going to work. People are in their radios or in their cars. People are doing their workouts. And while they're doing those things, this soothing voice can be in their ear. I think I have figured out the issue associated with the volume to get it loud enough that everybody can hear me, but not so loud that it creates an echo. Like I said, this week was going to be a work in progress. And it's Friday, and I think we have nailed down, at the very least, the worst aspects of it. I'm going to have to get better at the mechanics. There's a lot of moving parts in trying to get this stuff together, but nevertheless, we're going to make this work. So, again, this is the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Like it, share it, tell your friends, give it to your kids, as much as they can understand it. So, as I was pointing out, Kamala Harris, she has been struggling. And as they said, Dana Bash said after the CNN interview, she didn't seal the deal. You know she was struggling by the reaction of Democrats. Now, Anderson Cooper was on TV yesterday, and he pointed out that Democrats were going after him. They were hitting him on this. I want to play this clip. This is Cooper on CNN talking about the MSNBC crowd attacking him for his interview. Let's play this clip. This is Cooper not feeling all that good about people hitting him for an interview where he, frankly, as Robin Beau said, just did his job.
I got so many. I don't look at comments about myself, but I was looking up some comments about my grief podcast, and I came across this whole inundation from people who are Harris supporters saying to me online today, like, how dare you, what a betrayal that you would ask her these questions.
No,
and I'm like,
your job.
you misunderstand what my job is. I'm not on MSNBC, and no disrespect, what they do is, they're very talented. But I don't watch it. I'm not interested in watching what these overpaid blow-dried anchors think. And I include myself in that overpaid blow-dried, although I don't blow-dry. I am overpaid. But I'm not interested in the anchor's opinion. I'm interested in facts and letting the viewers make up their own mind. So anyway.
That clip is hilarious. That clip is hilarious. Because he goes with this notion that, these people are attacking me. The key point that he made out, he says, I don't watch MSNBC. I'm not like that. His point being, MSNBC, every bit as much as Fox News, is for a Democratic audience. They cater to a Democratic audience. And he said, look, I'm not about the propaganda stuff. I just want to know what's true. Insinuating that MSNBC is pushing a particular political agenda. And he's right. It's clear as day. They want Kamala Harris to win. And anything that inhibits, undermines, subverts that, they are going to be ideologically against. So it's like, I just did my job. I asked her questions that people wanted to know. I asked her stuff that got to the heart of the matter, and I pressed her on it when she didn't necessarily give me an answer. I did my job. The fact that your candidate looked bad is on your candidate. That's not necessarily on me for doing my job. Cooper is right. He's entirely right. If Harris has a bad interview, that is because Harris had a bad interview. Nobody was saying this stuff when Harris was in the debate with Trump and she trounced him. Nobody had issue with that at all. No, they're having issues now. And to just be clear about it, don't take my word for it. People who watched it after the fact, and they were giving their analysis after the fact, right here. None of these people have an axe to grind against Kamala Harris, and all of these people most likely will end up voting for Kamala Harris. So this is not a situation where we're talking about, oh, these people just inherently dislike her. That is not the situation to which we found ourselves. Right here, this is a few of the views that took place after the interview.
Many specifics in terms of what she would do.
If her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that.
Focused a lot more on Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say, than she did on many specifics in terms of what she would do.
If her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that.
If her goal was to close the deal, I am not sure she did that. And it's not just, the host on MSNBC. You get Democrat David Axelrod saying something very similar. Let's right here. Let's hear Axelrod.
In Israel than Trump. And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking. When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking.
The word salad thing is something that we have brought up before, and something that for whatever reason she can't correct. You ask her a straight question, and instead of getting a straight answer, what you get is effectively a word salad. It doesn't work. That doesn't translate well. And because it doesn't translate well, it's something that people have frankly started to notice. And again, as they started to notice it, it becomes something that they started to talk about on media. And you get Democrats complaining about media. Charlemagne the God went on CNN and says, "You're spending too much time on Kamala Harris." None of them were saying this stuff when she had her glow as she was floating through the election, everything being great without any issues. They're saying it now. And they're saying it now because they perceive a sort of a diminishing in the returns that they're effectively getting. As I showed earlier in the show, this polling from Real Clear Politics is just giving the average of what they're seeing in the polling space. And then if you look, Joe Biden leads the race, Trump is up, because keep in mind, at that point, everybody thought, okay, Trump is incompetent, Kamala Harris, nobody likes her, she's not great, she's not a great candidate. But if you notice, real soon or real quickly, Harris takes the lead. She gets a glow. That lead remains all the way out, up until, September 18th, a month ago. And then a slow increase by Trump. Until now, Harris is 0.3 based on average. But it's not the average that's the issue. It's the most latest polls. +3 for Trump, +2 for Trump. These are big polls. +3 for Harris in the TIPP poll. I still don't know what that is. +2 for Trump. In the last 4 polls, Trump is up 3 out of 4. You can go to the other 2, Reuters and Morning Consult. I don't really use Morning Consult. But even in the last 5, Trump is up 3. What they are seeing and what they are responding to is momentum. They can feel it. It's palpable. It's momentum. Harris, in order to try to combat this, has started to do multiple interviews. So she did the town hall. She was doing another interview. She did sit-down interviews. But the problem for her, and it's a problem I don't know necessarily how she's going to solve, how do you regain a lead through something other than talking? And the reason I said it is because ultimately your talking is making things worse. Meaning you as a politician feel yourself going down and diminishing. Okay, you need to change that process. Okay, how do you do it? Other than going out and doing interviews, when the interviews that you do are not giving you bang for the buck, and not just not giving you bang for the buck, it's part and part to the reason you have started to degrade, or for that matter, Trump has started to go up into the polls. It's not like Trump is saying or doing anything. Nothing has fundamentally happened. It's not like there's been an interview or like a debate where one person falls apart. It's not like one person fell on stage, or it's not like somebody came out and said something that immediately changed the context of the race. The momentum in this is a moderate momentum. Keep in mind, for a Democrat to win, the rule of thumb is that they need to be up 5 points in a general election. Not only is she not up 5 points, I would argue to you that in many of the national polls, she started to go down, even if it's by 0.1 or by 1 point. From a standpoint of an election, especially for a Democrat, that is bad. That is extremely bad. We'll see if the polling is correct in the way it lines up. I would say Nate Silver has given Donald Trump the lead at this point, and the chances of winning the race from Nate Silver's point of view is clearly in Donald Trump's camp. It's astonishing to me. Donald Trump has been all over the place and been completely incoherent. But I would say one thing. There was this point about feeling like 2016, and Kamala Harris had a bit of Hillary energy with him. Oh, by the way, black vote. As I pointed this out before. 2016, 92%. 2020, 90% for Democrats. 2024, 78%. 78%. If a Republican gets 78% Democratic support, that is a death knell for the Democratic Party. That is a death knell. One last point. And the reason why I think Jamarl say Hillary Clinton energy. If you listen to Trump's rally, Trump is all over the place. But not just all over the place, though. There are moments where he is lucid every so often, and he would bring up kitchen table issues, if I can find it. But he would bring up kitchen table issues, and he would go into things about the economy. He would say something about, I'm going to do this for workers, and I'm going to do this for the middle class, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Harris, every so often, she may bring something up like that, but for the most part, her focus is Trump is horrible, Trump is horrible, I can't believe you people are going to vote for Trump, which seems to be her main argument. This is Frank Luntz. Frank Luntz goes into this also. Because keep in mind, at one point, Frank Luntz was like, Harris has taken the lead in this race. Trump is going to lose this race. Trump is doing everything in his power to lose this race. That's not where Frank Luntz is today. This is Frank Luntz.
I think that clip illustrates exactly why Harris is in trouble at this point. And it's something that I don't understand why the campaign does not address. They asked her specifically, where do you stand on the wall? And what does she do? She goes and shifts it right to Donald Trump. Immediately mentions him twice. Right. Within the first 5 seconds, she still hasn't closed the deal. She still hasn't said to people exactly what she would do. In fact, what she should have done in the opening of that town hall is said, I want to tell you what I'm going to do in the first hour, in the first day, and in the first week. And it's going to take me 5 minutes. So, Anderson, you're going to have to sit tight. Here's what we're going to do by 1 p.m. She didn't do any of that. She hasn't told the public step by step what she's about.
Let me ask you.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every so often, Harris would say, I'm going to give $5,000 to homeowners or whatever, or to this person, that person in tax cuts. I'm going to give $25,000 to people buying a house. Keep in mind, those are very minor in the context of 4 years in office. And it doesn't really give context to what you want to do, what you plan to do, what your vision for the country is. I would argue vision matters. When Sanders is saying, I am fighting for the middle class, and I believe that we need to increase Social Security, we need to expand Medicare, we need to do this and that. That is very clear. There's, you know what he wants, you know what his focus is, you know what he plans to do. That's not the same thing with Harris. And it's not unfair for people to bring that up. Donald Trump, at the very least, was president at one point. And so the people who are backing him for a myriad of reasons. But all things being equal, Harris is the one who wants to take that job. And yeah, it is somewhat to her detriment that she wasn't in a primary, that she didn't have to flesh that stuff out. And that now there's this kind of looming question of what does she plan to do if indeed she gets into that office? Because again, it wasn't fleshed out in the primary. That's why I say Biden didn't necessarily do her any favors on that very specific issue. Frank Luntz is right. She would have made more bang for the buck as opposed to articulating her vision, her plan in a larger framework of what she's trying to reach for and what she's trying to go for, instead of spending every question about how bad Trump is and how much you dislike Trump. It hasn't worked well for her. The afterglow is over with. And the closer we get to the election, people are going to want to know, what are the candidates stand for? Who are you? What are you as a political figure? I pointed this poll out once before, not even a poll. This was an article in the New Yorker where they said, a former Obama administration official, now in finance, told me this firm spends tens of thousands of dollars a month as lobbyists and consultants, and yet, quote, all these fancy pants people, former members of Congress, nobody can tell me conclusively what she believes. And I think therein lies the issue. Nobody can tell you conclusively what Kamala Harris believes. And because of that, she's suffering for it. And she has yet to find an answer for it. And this notion of introspection, this notion of digging in to figure out what is the issue, what is the problem. Instead, they don't want to do that. They double down on Donald Trump is bad, Donald Trump is Hitler, Donald Trump Likes Hitler, Donald Trump is going to have a fascist uprising in America. Donald Trump needs to be locked up. According to Joe Biden, Trump is going to shoot people. According to Joe Biden, these are all the things that they're basically saying, ignoring the fact that the guy was actually president once before. It hasn't worked. It's not working. And it doesn't necessarily seem she has the capability of reorienting the ship. There are 2 weeks left, or a week and some change left in this election. We'll see what she does. Up to this point, I'm very skeptical that any changes are going to be made. Every random Democrat that I run into don't seem to see the issue. They are shocked that people will vote for Trump. They think that it's misinformation because they're sexist, racist, bigoted, and everything else, without any level of introspection into why the American public see them a certain way, and for that matter, can't even fathom that they're seen a particular way at all. I would argue that this is the issue, this inability to look at yourself and have some level of introspection as to why you are viewed a particular way and why you are breaking even, if not losing, to man you considered a carnival barker, to man who tried to overthrow the U.S. government, and for the most part, a man who, I would argue, a bit of a clown. Robin is right. Trump spent like $9 trillion, or at the very least, they gave Trump $9 trillion on the debt ceiling. And he spent that money on millionaires and billionaires. And yes, COVID became an issue in which they were losing jobs and everything else. But the reality of it is, that is the guy you're running against. That is the guy you're having a hard time beating. And there's no introspection into why. I would argue 30% of people who voted for Obama turned around and vote for Trump. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is Kamala Harris having such a hard time against this guy? You have to ask yourself, why? And instead of saying Jill Stein, instead of saying blacks are being insufficiently loyal, Vladimir Putin is tricking environmentalists, Vladimir Putin is doing something, Xi Jinping is doing something, Iran is doing something, Cuba is doing something, Ralph Nader, not even in the race. Meaning, instead of looking for all of these other excuses as to why you didn't win and why people didn't vote for you, I would argue, start at home. You guys are listening to the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. I'll be back with my guest in a moment. Hey, yo, what's going on? Can you hear me okay, Daniel? I am doing great. Thank you for joining me, man. I really appreciate you joining me. I am going to cut back on in a very short moment. I'm just doing a reset for the break. There we are. All right, I am back. This is, there we are. This is the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamarl Thomas. I hope you guys are happy to enjoy me joining me. I'm glad you guys can join me this morning. I am here with Daniel McAdams. Man, I appreciate you joining me. Daniel McAdams is Executive Director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaulinstitute.org. Daniel, man, thank you for joining me. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you, Jamal? Great to be on your show.
Thank you for that. Yeah, they've killed fault lines. It is no longer in existence in America, but I've had my show for a while now, and I'm going to keep doing this show from Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am so happy you could join me, man. I've enjoyed, I've watched you for a while. I think I've said this on the show, but I don't know if the audience heard it. I've watched you for a while. And so thank you for joining me. Let me check my sound for 1 second because it has a tendency to drop. There we are. So I want to start with the secret document, the intel leaks, and the significance of those leaks. The leaks, just for the audience to know, they were several documents that were released on Middle East Spectator, I believe it's called. And it basically went into Israeli preparations for an attack on Iran. It even went into nukes, effectively outing the fact, the open secret, that Israel has nukes. It pointed out that they didn't have an expectation of Israel using those nukes, thankfully. But ultimately, it was giving out military secrets in some cases, but basically dealing with us spying on Israel and us seeing the preparations that Israel is making for its attacks. Give me your take on these documents. I guess the first question is A, are they legitimate? And B, is there anything in those documents that stood out to you?
Well, I'm not qualified to judge whether they're legitimate, but I do know my good friend Larry Johnson, who was a CIA analyst, said to him, at least from his reading of the document, it looks legitimate to him. So I think we can assume that this is a genuine leak. The question is, who leaked it and why? It's not just the documents, it's not just the information in the documents. In the wilderness of mirrors, that is the spook world, the intel world, it's always like who did it and why, who are they trying to get to? But I think one take, and I think this is Larry Johnson's take, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is that someone's trying to send a message to Israel that we know what you're doing, we watch what you're doing, and to try to head off a kind of full-fledged. I think that's why Blinken was in Israel again just this past day. I think he left, he came back, is trying to head off a full-scale attack from Israel onto Iran, because the U.S. knows it will blow up into a major war in the region. The last thing Kamala Harris needs a few days before the election is a big war in the region. So I think that's the intent. Whether it was a disaffected employee of the Department of Defense, which it seems to be pointing to right now, I don't know, or something else, I think it remains to be seen.
Well, one of the things that people are considering is that the administration intentionally put this information out in order to head off an attack by Israel. Basically, we need to slow them down. This is not in our interest. It's not even in Israel's interest to get into this kind of large-scale war. With this kind of acknowledgement that what Netanyahu seems to want is to pull the United States into a conflict in the Middle East, and assumes that since we have given them everything they wanted up to this point, even when the administration complained about it in the open, that if they attack Iran, Iran responds with an overwhelming attack on Israel, then we are stuck in the situation of having come to the assistance and rescue of Israel and dragging ourselves in a full-scale war, with the idea that this leak was there to head that off, to say, okay, here are Israel's military plans, in which case Israel will have to reset its military plans because Iran, Russia, China, and everybody else is going to watch those things. What do you think about that? What is your take on that? Do you think that has legs? Do you think that's valid, that the administration would do something like that in order to head this off? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible. I'm somewhat skeptical. First of all, it wasn't a full battle plan. There was just a couple of new pieces of information that came out, including, I think, one type of weapon that had not been known before, one type of missile, I think it was, that hadn't been known before. So I'm just not sure that it would have been an official government leak on the U.S. part. But hey, anything's possible. Again, it's a wilderness of mirrors. The one thing we do know that the U.S. apparently, I mean, at least for everyone who's looking at it, they are preparing for a major war. And I think even as we speak right now, I was looking on Twitter at some of the military accounts that I follow, and there are a ton of U.S. refueling jets heading toward the Middle East from the U.S. and from Europe. So the U.S. is clearly preparing itself for a major war. A lot of F-16s out there. So, Jamarl, it's kind of one of these things where, they send Blinken over there saying, go ahead, please don't make it too bad because we don't want a war. But by the way, we're going to bring all our jets in. We're all ready to back you up if necessary. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu is a lot of things, but he's no dummy. And so if he looks around and he sees all these military assets, hey, it's a go. And he is obsessed with the election right now. And so everyone is looking at the election. He knows that this is the time to pull the trigger.
I mean, they gave him a blank check. Like back in the First World War, the war guilt was added to Germany because they said Germany gave, the Austro-Hungarian Empire a blank check. I mean, the moment you get somebody a blank check and basically say, hey, I don't want you to do that, but if you do, we'll still back you, or we're going to support you to the hilt. Either way, any situation, we're going to back you and support you to the hilt. That is what the Biden administration has basically put itself on the hook for. And so this notion of, I don't want them to go into Rafah and they go into Rafah. Okay, well, but you gave them a blank check. You put no conditions on what you were basically doing. So why do you think he would do something different? Not to mention, he doesn't like you. And all things being equal, he thinks you're going to lose, in which case Trump comes in. So from Netanyahu's point of view, why on earth would I show any level of restraint? Why should I show any of this? You're going to back me to the hilt. From my point of view, though, it's weird. I mean, Israel is going to get hit if it attacks. There's nothing that the U.S. can do about it. Meaning, Iran puts up 1,000 missiles. They will hit their targets. They've already shown. Israel is almost accepting that fact before even going into the process, which is why I think it's insane that the U.S. continues to give weapons, arguing it doesn't want a larger Middle East conflict that we get dragged into. By the same token, here are all the weapons, guns, missiles, and everything else in order for you to have that larger Middle East conflict. It's a conflicted, contradictory voicing versus actual policy. There's been this conversation taking place online within the foreign policy community about whether this is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail. What do you fall on that? Do you think this is just U.S. policy, or do you think, no, the U.S. is being dragged into this?
I mean, I hate to split the difference, but I do think there's a combination of things. I mean, I think, the strength of AIPAC as essentially a foreign lobby in Congress, lobbying members of Congress to be completely on board with whatever Israel wants, is very, very powerful, and it's very, very real. And we've seen, they're basically very open about it. They fund candidates, and if Russia had an RPAC or whatever and came in and were funding candidates, we'd go nuts, So you have that on the one hand, there's no congressional breaks. It's a very dysfunctional system, and it's very dangerous because there's not a single member of Congress now with the courage, well, there might be one, but with the courage to say, hang on, we need to put on the brakes. This is not a good thing. In fact, they are out, competing each other to be the most pro-Israel. And, they're not doing Israel any favors because, Jamarl, as you point out very well, Israel's going to get hit, and it's going to get hit big. And the destabilizing effect of this strike is unknown. You have a recent rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia that could get blown up if Saudi Arabia gets involved. This thing could get extremely bad extremely quickly, and there's just no one of any stature in the U.S. saying it absolutely has to stop.
So that one member of Congress, Thomas Massey, has basically fought the lobby. They tried to put a bunch of money to get rid of him, and they lost. On the left, they put in $100 million. AIPAC and those surrounding groups put in like $100 million to influence and affect the U.S. elections. And nobody is complaining one iota. Like you said, they had an RPAC. They had a $10 bucks. They'd lose their minds. They'd go bananas if it was like RPAC or CPAC, China PAC. Well, there's a CPAC, but it's not a China PAC. I want to go into your article because I was fascinated by this article and I enjoyed it. I'm going to put the article at the bottom just so people would know. And for some reason, I don't have the name of it right here with me. But can you tell the name of that article just so people would know it? It's the one, just to give context. The article dealt with this idea that the vultures are surrounding Trump. That now that Donald Trump seems to be going up in the polling, that all of these neocons have started to circle him. Nikki Haley, they asked Trump, who are you going to have in your cabinet? And one neocon after the next was mentioned in this cabinet. This is despite the fact that Donald Trump is running as if he is the quote-unquote peace candidate, as if he's the only peace candidate that's in the race. Do you consider Donald Trump a peace candidate, for one? And well, said it one more time. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say I had to look it up. It's neocons circling a surging Trump. Will he bite? And he's smart for putting himself up as a peace candidate. And I wish he were a peace candidate. And I think in some ways he'll be less of a war candidate than Kamala Harris, just because he understands his constituency to a degree, which is a very rapidly changing Republican Party. I don't know if your listeners and viewers probably saw, but we talked about it on our show yesterday. A new poll came out. It was actually done by a progressive organization, but it was a wide poll, and it had one shocking result, in my opinion, which is that a majority of American Republicans between the age of 18 and 24, the majority, 52%, would like to see an arms embargo on Israel. So you have a big chunk of the future Republican Party saying we don't want this anymore. But we really don't have anyone. Trump is not that person. I mean, he's running as I'm more pro-Israel than Kamala Harris. So he's definitely not that candidate. But the issue with the article is, as we see all the time, I mean, Trump, he doesn't distinguish between friend and foe. That's why you had this dopey General Kelly saying, well, I was hanging out with Trump when he was president and he was praising Hitler. This is the guy you hired, man. You hired John Bolton, you hired Nikki Haley. Are you surprised that they stabbed you in the back? And I just saw last night, I was looking on Twitter X, and he's at some event with Marco Rubio. I mean, these guys, they're not your friends, Don, but he doesn't seem to get it.
He doesn't seem to get it. John Kelly, just so the audience knows what you're talking about, John Kelly comes out and says, well, Donald Trump was praising Hitler and said that Hitler had good ideas and good generals. Kamala Harris doubles down on this, does an entire press conference on Trump apparently praising Hitler and how this is horrible and everything else. And you even get Hillary Clinton, who comes out. Hillary Clinton, of course, cantankerous, screams that Donald Trump is going to have a Hitler rally in New York, and that the people who are visiting and supporting Donald Trump are effectively Nazis. This is the stuff. Look, they're getting desperate, so fair enough. The stuff is getting more shrill. I don't think this is going to all that much work, though. I mean, it comes across on some level the way it is. Shrill, desperate, etc. I don't quite get it. I want to go to another thing. Liz Cheney. So part of, I think, Kamala Harris's other problem is you are a Democrat running around the country with a Cheney, and you're screaming that Donald Trump is against democracy, but Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney are just fantastic statesmen. This is the same Dick Cheney that was in the Bush administration that invaded a country on a lie, got 1 million Iraqis killed, was attempting to try to go all the way to Iran. They spent $7 trillion, not to mention 4,000 American lives to do it. Just astonishing. Do you think, in fact, I'm going to play the clip for this just so people can know what we're talking about. And then you get Kamala Harris arguing that the forever wars are necessary because of Pearl Harbor. I want to play that clip.
Bringing the allies together is because they are fully aware of and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II. Remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation. And then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember recent history. Europe remembers as well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends, isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us in terms of our national security. So I say that.
Daniel, I saw you shaking your head as that was being played. Give me your take on that. I mean, isolationism will not save us. And we were an isolationist nation at one point. And then Pearl Harbor happened. And so we effectively must stay in these forever wars. Give me a take on that.
I mean, if only Trump was an isolationist, I'd probably support him. And probably most Americans would too. He's like, oh, he wants to get us out of NATO. Okay, that sounds good to me. No more $1 trillion military budget. That sounds all right to me. Keep the money back home. All right, that sounds all right. It's such a comic book view of history. And maybe she thinks that Americans are dumbed down enough that they will say, oh, that's right, But the the irony of it is, which everyone should know, and it's not any kind of conspiratorial thing, but Japan was provoked into attacking the U.S. in Pearl Harbor. They didn't attack us because we were isolationist. They they attacked the U.S. because the U.S. was blocking their oil. They were blockading what Japan needed for its military activities. We provoked them. FDR wanted to have this attack. He needed the attack, and he provoked it. I mean, and maybe it was controversial 30 or 40 years ago, but it really isn't anymore. So the whole thing is just complete bogus. It's a complete lie. It just shows how superficial she is as a candidate, and people see that. People see through it.
I mean, I think the wild part about it is you're running around with the Cheney, and you get all of these Republicans who are going with this idea that if we can stop Trump now, we can get rid of Trumpism and we can take back the party. We can go back to the same things. I agree with you, by the way. I don't think Trump is an anti-war candidate. I think, from my point of view, he is more willing to make a deal to end that stuff. So, yeah, he'll make a deal with North Korea. Yeah, Ukraine is not his war, so he cares less about it. Yeah, he'll pull the troops out of Syria. He'll pull the troops out of Afghanistan. Whereas a Democrat, that's not on the table. I mean, when Joe Biden got in office, he immediately went back to the missile exercises in North Korea, and North Korea immediately started back firing off missiles into the Sea of Japan. And today, North Korea has modernized their nuclear force. They've gotten very close with Russia in regards to some of the technology going back and forth. Iran is no longer isolated. Iran is going to be part of BRICS. And again, they've been selling oil and everything else and ingratiating themselves to the large world. And for all of this talk about Russia being isolated, they just had the BRICS summit where more than half of the globe is represented and 30 nations are there. And they're screaming where he's isolated. It's absurd. I'm sick of this, shaking a fist to the rest of the world when that is not really the way we need to engage. Give me your take on this idea of this kind of neocon foreign policy that has ingratiated itself into the American orthodoxy. And do you think Trump is a permutation of that in a way that is, let's say, being instantiated into the Republican Party as a whole, even if it's not necessarily, let's say, in the upper echelon of that party?
Well, just quickly on the Liz Cheney thing. I mean, if you're going to pal around with Republicans, find one at least that people like. Everyone hates Liz Cheney. I mean, everyone, all progressives hate her. Republicans hate her. She lost by the historic margin in her primaries. Nobody voted for her. Like, why would you hang out with someone like that? Like the most unpopular kid in school.
She's acting like she's a statesman. She's like our statesman, Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney.
It's incredible. It's very sad to see, It's sad to see the Democrats, who we worked closely with during the Bush administration. When I was on Capitol Hill, we had a good group of progressive members opposing the war, making all sorts of plans and doing all sorts of things. It's sad to see what's happened. There really isn't a peace camp, as you point out, with a couple of exceptions on the Democrat side. But as far as Trump, I don't think Trump is a neocon. And part of the reason is I don't think he has any ideology at all. It's sort of I think Jamarl, I think you hit it exactly on the head. There's a chance he'll do the right thing from our perspective in some of these areas, but because it's not just we got to get these troops out of there. They're making me look bad. Hey, Bibi, stop the bombing. You're making me look bad. I mean, it's all about that. So that's why I have a little bit of optimism with him. I know I'm going to be disappointed as I was last time in so many ways. But there is a chance that he will not be as bad as we know she will be because she's not going to be running things. It's going to be other people running things.
Last question, and I'm going to let you go. As I was pointing out, there seems to be this thing where all of these Republicans have decided, certain Republicans have decided, okay, we're going to lump in with the Democrats in order to somehow create an opposition to Trump, and then we can take back the party. Do you think that works? Meaning, if they full well believe that if they can hug Kamala Harris, and let's be clear, foreign policy-wise, all of these people agree. All of these people, whether it's Mitt Romney, whether it's Dick Cheney, whether it's Liz Cheney, whether it's George Bush, you can go down the list of basically effectively neocons that full well agree with the foreign policy that Kamala Harris is going to having. Liz Cheney, when she was in Congress, voted 80% with Donald Trump. And yet she hates the guy and acts as if there's some kind of sea of difference in regards to policy. Do you think this is going to work, though? Do you think if they beat Trump, they can, quote unquote, take their party back? Oh, give me your thoughts. What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, I think the ship has sailed for these people. You know, their ideas are extremely unpopular. They're extremely outdated. I mean, I think the energy in the Republican Party right now, and maybe I'm just wishful thinking, but the energy seems to me to be in the anti-war direction, in the populist direction. And J.D. Vance is far from a perfect specimen. But I think the appeal of J.D. Vance is that he comes from the part of the country where people of all racial backgrounds are united in the fact that they've been screwed over and they've lost their jobs, to a globalization, to a globalism that doesn't benefit the United States. So that kind of blue collar populism that J.D. Vance represents imperfectly, but at least he represents. I mean, I think that's the future of the Republican Party, if it has a future. These people are the past. The John Boltons of the world are the past.
Daniel, man.
You're getting ripped off, man.
No, I totally agree with you. Daniel, man, I really appreciate you joining me. Always appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you. The voice you guys were listening to is Daniel McAdams. He's executive director of the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity. You can learn more about Daniel's work at the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity by going to ronpaul.org. Daniel, thank you, man. I really appreciate you joining me. All right, guys, we have come to the end of the show. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Let me make sure that, one second, I got to get all of my P's and Q's out the way first. And good, we have about a couple of minutes. I wanted to make sure that I always say if people give super chats that I read it out. Oh, somebody did. Okay, this is, I'm always late. Damn it. Nut 716. That's okay, Nut 716. You made it. It's an early show, so I totally understand you getting here a little bit late. That is perfectly acceptable, and that is perfectly okay. In fact, there's another one somewhere that I'm missing. One second. I'm going to find it. Where is it? Nut gave one. I'm missing somebody. All right, I'm going to find you. It doesn't give me a super chat list right here in my stream. Jamarl, when will you be on Generational Change? Monday. So Generational Change asked me to come on Monday, so I'm going to be on there Monday. I look forward to it. Wait a minute, let me get my volume up. I need to fix that. I need to find a way to fix that. It's going to be on Monday. Jen invited me on the show, so I'm definitely going to visit. I need to figure out how to keep these streams live. What's wrong? They don't stay up for you. They go down for some reason. JT, you may need to use your piece to avoid feedback, an earpiece. So I tried to use the earpiece. I tried to use my Bose headphones, and it gives, there's a double sound in it. So it's almost like I would say something, then there's a pause, and then I would hear it in my earpiece. That is greatly annoying. So I need to find a way around it. The earpiece has a lull and a lag in it that makes it difficult to use. The mic also has this kind of weird effect that the volume drops. So let's say if I'm bringing a guest, for example, the volume would drop. And I would have to go back in and manually update it. So over the course of the show, you may hear like me get quieter and then go back to normal. Quieter, back to normal. That's because I'm affecting the volume immediately. I don't know why it's doing that. Again, this was a week in progress. Today probably was the best show that I've had up to this point. There's one other issue associated with the way there's a lag that happens. So let's say you're talking to a guest, and then there's a lag where the person stops for a second and then starts back talking again. That's something to do with the Wi-Fi signal. That has been the case for all of these last few shows. I'm working on it. I'll try to get it straight. Look, my objective is straightforward: to have the best damn morning show that's out there. And yes, it's online. Yes, we're starting out with very small numbers. But keep in mind, I started the show off when I first started with 0. I didn't have a big-time news show on Fox News. I didn't have a show on TYT. I didn't have any of that stuff. I started from 0. And if I need to start from a low number in order to try to build it up, my thought is to be consistent and to keep going and try to get the best guests, to try to improve the guests that I get, to get subject matter experts, and to do it that way. So when I started all of this, 10 years ago, I started at 0. And so starting this 7 a.m. is a bit of a challenge for people to get up that early, but I was doing radio show at 7 a.m. I'm going to keep that going. I just hope you guys stay with me. So give it a like if you enjoy it. It helps. If you want to help with PayPal, Patreon, Super Chats, all of those also help. I'm not going to be like one of those people that browbeat you with that stuff, but it definitely is a benefit, and it definitely does help the channel and helps me keep going. To give you my plans, and I'll end it on this. Look, my objective is to get another radio show. I'm going to move to DC specifically for the radio show. So I may move to another state or something like that in regards to do another radio show. But my objective is to keep doing this. I regret stopping the YouTube channel when I started radio. And I want to do ultimately both. In fact, I think one feeds off the other. One improves the other in many respects. I became a better steward of my show because of the radio show and because of working with like Mendia and Garland and those guys. They have my infinite respect and appreciation, especially Garland. Garland was the one that basically got me in on radio. He brought me in to do Fault Lines as a guest. And I remember after that first show, I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, this is it. I love this. And so my objective is to continue to do that and continue to do this. So from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., I will be the voice that is in your ear, doing it to you directly in your ear hole. And you guys, I want you all to have a fantastic weekend. And I want to thank all of you. 112 likes, great. Yeah, 112 likes is not bad. Garland was here earlier. Yeah, Garland was here, I think, Tuesday. I'm going to try to get Malik to join me at some point. I talked to him. Does Garland have a producer? Ask him for some advice. I don't think he has a producer. I mean, Garland, if he's doing it on his own. In fact, all of us are doing it on our own at this point. So, and that's the rub. Having to do all of it at once. It's like you are giving commentary, also getting the guests, managing the show, getting the script correctly. It's like you're doing all of that stuff, and that stuff is doing all at once. Jeremy Shellman, that didn't sound nice. What didn't sound nice? I've only said good things about everybody. As someone with a similar situation, I don't think Ritter had his producers. Yeah. But keep in mind, they're not doing a show either. They're not doing a show either. What they're, like, meaning, if you ask any of these guys, what these guys are basically doing is they're going out and they're doing one topic or one interview or one statement. That's different than trying to do a 3-hour show, because that means you have to bring people on. You have to bring people on Zoom. You have to communicate with those people in order to get those people on. You have to make sure that the volume, the sound, the look, if there's any issues that are happening, you're doing that stuff on the fly. So it's a bit different. If you're looking at like Andrew Napolitano, he has one guest, and then the guest goes. In fact, he even has somebody like a producer or something helping him in the background. It's different. It's a different animal. I'm trying to do a 3-hour news show, and news, politics, culture, etc., and trying to do it effectively alone. But whatever. If this goes extraordinarily well, and I can afford to have a producer sitting with me, I would do that. But up to this point, it's just me. Look, I'm going to end it. You guys have a phenomenal weekend, and I will see you bright and early Monday morning, the Jamarl Thomas Morning Show. Share it, like it, tell your friends. I will see you Monday morning. You guys have a great weekend. Jamarl Thomas Morning Show, signing off.